Chapter 401, Prelude to the Awakening of God's Microcosm, Pluto's 12 Palaces. If you're asking about special places, I found a few spots my senses can't penetrate. I can usually see every corner of the world and hear any sound from afar. But there's an underwater region, a place in Greece, and an area near Germany where I can't see or hear anything. At the Greek location, I did catch a glimpse through the barrier, a clock tower on fire, and a group of people fighting there. I couldn't make out what was happening inside, only that a group had rushed in. They moved extremely fast, mostly at supersonic speeds, Super Tyrant reported to Axis. This world was wrong in subtle ways. It was clearly Earth, yet familiar geography didn't match. Greece sat where the Americas should be. Axis could adapt to geographic inversion, but the real problem was that his enhanced sight and hearing, abilities that normally let him perceive the entire planet, had failed in certain areas. Axis frowned. The spots Super Tyrant couldn't penetrate, Greece, the seabed, and near Germany, were peculiar. Were they wearing some kind of strange armor? Axis asked suddenly. Yes, boss. They wore uniquely designed armor. Some were fully covered, others only 60 to 70% covered. They're very strong, not a match for me, but their conditioning is second only to me and Super Queen, Super Tyrant replied. Use your X-ray vision, inspect their bodies, see if there's anything different inside. Any energy fluctuations? Super Tyrant concentrated and peered closely at the few figures rushing forward. They have a very mysterious energy inside them. I don't know how to describe it, boss. It's like a miniature universe. Axis understood immediately. The thing making divine power riot and producing strange resonances was the core energy of this world, the microcosm. No wonder it was erupting. The birth of a universe is an explosion, and the searing pain Axis felt wasn't mere repulsion. It was the precursor to his microcosm awakening. Uncultivated, foreign divine energy, exposed directly to this universe's rules, was being forcibly ignited and drawn into the pattern of this world. Without proper guidance, that awakening would mean only one thing: annihilation. Ordinary Saint Seiya training methods would be useless for a god. He needed a god's method to awaken his microcosm, and he needed it now, or the uncontrolled power inside him would tear him apart before he could do anything else. There would be nothing left. Super Tyrant, take us to that mountain, the one with the 12 golden palaces, Axis ordered. There was a ready candidate here for learning a god's method. One of Greece's virgin goddesses, Athena, Saorikito in human form. Axis didn't know which branch of the 12 palaces he'd stumbled into. There were two famous 12 palaces battles in the Saint Seiya saga: Seiya's original run through the palaces and the later Hades chapter in which Hades' specters forced their way through. The latter was darker and even deadlier. Which was unfolding now? Super Tyrant accelerated at once, grabbing Axis and Grell, one in each hand. Boss, hold on tight. Whoosh, boom. A sonic boom tore the air as Super Tyrant became a blurred afterimage and rocketed toward the sanctuary. The wind pressure did almost nothing to Axis and Grell. Super Tyrant, the armored people you saw, what color was their armor? Pitch black or multicolored? Do they have a deathly aura? Axis asked. If they were specters, it would indicate the Hades invasion. Mostly black and purple, boss. They're out of sight now. Must have all entered the barrier. Super Tyrant said. Black and purple. Dozens of them. That pointed to the Hades palaces, not the original Bronze Saints' assault. In that event, Athena faked her death to descend to the underworld and end Hades. Athena would, in effect, die to seal him away. That was dangerous. In a matter of seconds, they arrived at the barrier. The moment they passed through, an invisible force took hold of Super Tyrant. He plunged from the sky and fell to the earth. He couldn't fly here. Boss, something's acting on me. I can't fly, only walk on two legs, Super Tyrant reported, bewildered. At the speed he'd been moving, falling should have made a crater or destroyed the city, but the Greek-style buildings below were unscathed. He had made no dent. Axis scanned the air and ground. I sense divine power, Olympian divine power, Grell said. The Amazons and other forces of myth also derived from Olympus. Every Amazon and many others possessed superhuman might. Axis studied the 12 golden palaces before them. According to lore, the palaces sealed by Mother Earth, Gaia, forced mortals to battle through each house to reach the top, Athena's palace. Gods were exceptions. Hades himself had once flown straight to Athena's palace, bypassing the palaces. The Ares palace ahead lay in ruins, evidence of a fierce fight. "Follow me. We need to get to the top. This is Athena's domain." "Another Athena," Axis said, leading Super Tyrant and Grell into the palaces. The Taurus palace showed the recent scars of massive force. A burly man in golden Taurus armor, 2.3 meters tall, stood upright, but dead. "Magnificent armor. A shame it's on this brute," Grell remarked. "He's just a mortal with slightly above-average physical quality. His cosmos extinguished. He's the weakest here. Let's move." Axis said. Among the Gold Saints, the so-called seafood duo were low on the hierarchy, but even compared to them, this bull's power was small. They moved on. The Gemini Palace was empty. The Cancer Palace reeked of death. Axis could sense it acutely. Many of the Gold Saints were gone. By the time they reached the Leo Palace, a pure, fiery solar cosmo blazed there. Golden points of light scattered. Several specters in black and purple surplices were already being flung aside. A man in lion-shaped armor was savagely beating the specters. Iolia, the Leo Gold Saint. "All of you, die! Lightning plasma," the man roared. "Which side do we help?" Grell asked Axis. "This man's strong, boss, but he can't match me," Super Tyrant said, eyeing Iolia. "Super Tyrant, target those black and purple armored grunts. Take them out. The Gold Lion is not our enemy. Don't cause unnecessary trouble," Axis ordered. Super Tyrant hesitated, then answered, "Got it. Black and purple armored grunts." Before the words finished, the ground beneath him exploded. He became a blur and crashed into the battlefield at supersonic speed. Iolia's golden Leo cloth glittered in the setting sun. He had just repelled a surge of specter attacks. The afterglow of his lightning plasma still scorched the air. Seiya, Shiryu, Hyoga, and Shun, 4 heavily wounded bronze saints, were straining to break through his obstruction to reach Lady Saori Kido. "Iolia, move aside! Lady Saori, she!" Seiya shouted, Pegasus Ryusei Ken flaring. Out of the blue, a brutal, primitive force struck from the side. "You grunts, get out of my way!" Super Tyrant's roar was thunder. Ignoring Iolia's astonishment and the Bronze Saint's attacks, a massive fist bearing overwhelming physical wind pressure slammed in, targeting not Iolia but the specters entangled with the Bronze Saints and the Saints themselves who blocked the path. "What?" Iolia's pupils constricted. There were no cosmo fluctuations, just pure, crushing physical strength at phenomenal speed. He moved instinctively to intercept. "Humph, annoying fellow," a cold female voice chimed. Grell. She floated, face expressionless. Her crimson omega eyes locked onto Iolia. 2 scarlet, twisting rays of annihilation and decomposition, omega rays, erupted, aimed not at Iolia's vitals but at his outstretched right arm, about to unleash lightning plasma. Grell's intent was clear. Stop Iolia from interfering with Super Tyrant. The crimson rays grazed Iolia's gold cloth, decomposing a chunk of golden shoulder armor. The edges melted and vanished. He grunted and staggered back, then gathered his Cosmo to the max and teleported sideways with a flash, pulling the 4 Bronze Saints to safety. He stared at Grell in horrified disbelief. No cloth defense should tear like that. That red light was wrong, malevolent. "Who are you? How dare you enter the Leo Palace?" Iolia demanded, turning to see Axis, Grell, and Super Tyrant. Super Tyrant ignored him. His fist slammed into a specter with the force of a meteor. Boom! Several specters who couldn't dodge were smashed to pieces. Black and purple surplus fragments scattered. The shockwave carved a trench and hurled shattered rock like cannonballs. Only 3 specters remained standing. "Come and play with me, old man. Let me show you the strength of the power race," Super Tyrant sneered. "Don't be nervous, Gold Saint. We aren't your enemies. We're here to help Athena," Axis said, stepping forward. Iolia's expression changed. He felt a god's aura from Axis. Besides Hades' warriors, another god had appeared at Athena's palace. Super Tyrant's gaze landed on the 3 remaining enemies. Their auras were different from the grunts, much stronger, but still not a match for him. The lead specter snorted, "Galaxian explosion!" He raised his hands and condensed a vast star river in his palms, countless phantom stars flashing, dying, spinning. A torrent of energy meant to shatter stars was hurled at Super Tyrant. "Aurora Execution," another cried, and an instant scorching frost descended. "Excalibur!" A golden sword of concentrated energy sliced towards Super Tyrant's neck, a coordinated triple attack from 3 Gold Saints, perfectly synchronized. Super Tyrant didn't intend to dodge. He would take it on his bare body, relying on sheer force to shatter Excalibur, the Galaxian explosion, and the freezing gale. He didn't regard this attack as something to fear. Ha! This is more like it! Ultraman didn't dodge. He walked straight into the galaxy explosion that could tear stars apart. Camus's Aurora Goddess's forgiveness that froze everything in its path, and Shura's earth-splitting holy sword. Boom! The torrent from the galaxy explosion struck Ultraman first, a blinding eruption of light and force. The shockwave wrecked the ground and the pillars of the Leo Temple, leaving ruins and a plume of smoke and debris. Camus's freezing air followed, aimed to lock the injured figure solid in absolute zero, while Shura's sword cut through the smoke toward the center of the blast. Then, almost at once, all three men's pupils shrank. Is that all? Barely enough to tickle me. A wild roar rolled out from the heart of the explosion and the frozen air. The cold was powerful, but it could not damage a Kryptonian's body. Not even absolute zero could hurt him. As for a golden blade that could split the earth or an energy capable of shattering stars, Ultraman had endured far worse. He strode out of the shattered turbulence and ice, unscathed. Part of the battlesuit across his chest was torn away by the galaxy explosion, revealing muscles like wrought steel, not a single white mark on them. Camus' absolute zero field had only left a thin crust of frost, immediately evaporated by the heat radiating from Ultraman's eyes. Shura's supposedly indestructible holy sword had rung with a high, metallic clang against his neck, leaving only a shallow white scar without breaking the skin. What? Saga, Camus, and Shura were stunned. To take a Galaxian explosion and an absolute zero arrest head-on and remain unharmed, even Shura's holy sword could not penetrate him. This was monstrous. The man wasn't even wearing a cloth, or if he was, he didn't need one. Now it's my turn, Ultraman snarled, grinning. His massive fist tore through the air and drove toward Shura, who was closest. The speed was beyond a Gold Saint's neurological reaction time. Shura crossed his arms to guard, pouring his cosmos to its limit. Crunch, bones shattered with a sound like a train strike. Shura flew backward like a cannonball, punching a human-shaped hole through the thick wall of the Leo Temple. Pieces of his surplice scattered, his arms hung twisted, blood streaming beneath his mask. With one blow, the Capricorn Gold Saint, who had only just been resurrected by Hades, lay grievously hurt. Shura, Camus cried, cold eyes finally edged with fear. He could not fathom how the holy sword had been shattered in a direct strike. What was that body made of? A god? Bastard! Saga's fury flared and his cosmos surged. Gemini's ultimate, another dimension. He thrust his hands forward. Space tore like fabric and a huge, dark rift yawned open. A terrifying suction from the void threatened to suck the physically indestructible Ultraman into an unknown other dimension. Seeing Shura felled, Saga decided a frontal fight would not work. Banishment to the endless other dimension was the only way. Ultraman felt the pull and was dragged toward the rift. He planted his feet, carving furrows into the temple floor, fighting with raw strength against spatial law. The rift still began to draw him in. Everyone watched, shocked. This was the first opponent they'd seen resist a spatial banishment with sheer physical force. He was truly a monster. Humph, petty tricks. From behind Axis, a voice snorted. Grail, the woman with crimson Omega eyes, fixed her gaze on Saga. Twist reality, Omega effect. Two distorted scarlet beams struck the edge of the tearing space. The annihilative, decomposing law contained in the rays acted on the rift's rim. Like a hot brand on ice, the edge of the dark void buckled and began to disintegrate. Saga's maintained other dimension was violently interfered with, and with a soundless collapse, the rift imploded and vanished. Saga staggered, his cosmos in disarray. He glared at Grail with mounting shock and anger. Her uncanny power made him uneasy. While she held him, Ultraman wrenched free of the residual pull and turned his fierce eyes on Saga. You can use space? I underestimated you, Ultraman said. Leave him to me. I'll tear him apart. But Grail floated forward before he could strike. She'd been affected less than Axis. A demigod was more resilient than a pure deity, and this small space user intrigued her. A spatial ability user is interesting. I will personally claim him. Her voice was cold with possessiveness, every bit Darkseid's daughter. Aeolia barked, fury and disbelief in his voice. Saga, why have you been revived? Did you betray Athena and side with the specters again? Shura, you were deceived once. Why again? Shiryu and Hyoga stared at the formerly dead gold saints they had fought before, unable to believe what they saw. Saga's pride as the former pope flared. He would not be humiliated. Collect him. Who do you think you're facing? Saga snarled, then surged his Cosmo. Jonru Mao Ken! A sickly purple light flared from his eyes. The Gemini's psychic fist, formless, intangible, a shock that could distort a soul and seize a will, manifested as an invisible arrow and shot straight at Grail's glabella. No one could withstand this move and remain free. Grail did not attempt to dodge. For a moment, something like a ripple crossed her inscrutable face. Her omega eyes flickered as if registering an unusual signal. The mental shock struck Grail's mental domain, and then nothing catastrophic happened. She swayed but recovered. Deep in her crimson gaze, tiny, twisted scarlet runes flashed and whirled before settling back into place. Mental attack? She said, faint surprise sliding into cold disdain. Attempting to shake a vessel that carries endless death and the will of termination? Foolish. Do you know who I am? Saga's pupils contracted. His Jonru Mao Ken had been nullified. The power that could bend a gold saint's will had crashed into her mind and produced only a faint ripple. What was her mind made of? Did she have a normal soul at all? Not mortal, Axis said with a smile. Grail is not immortal. She is a god. Her father is the leader of a new god race, Darkside. Power-wise, you could compare him to God King Zeus. Zeus? Saga looked incredulous, and so did the others. Zeus? The Supreme Olympian? Axis kept smiling. Not your universe's Zeus. My point is, I'm from another world. Different rules. Darkside may be unstoppable in some places, but in others, well, there are gods that rival him. Iolia pressed for clarity. What are you saying? You're from another universe. Axis nodded. He shrugged and, as if annoyed at holding back, spoke bluntly. Let me explain. The Gold Saints revived to attack the 12 houses were granted a false life by the Underworld King, temporary resurrection. After 24 hours, they returned to the dead. Saga exploded. You lie. The Underworld King gave me eternal life. You can tell yourself that, but the truth is known to successive popes, Axis said. He didn't bother to sugarcoat it. The secret concerned Athena's divine cloth. This is a secret only popes have known. Shut up, Saga snapped, rage blazing. If the specters carried this truth back to Hades, the entire holy war could go wrong. They had to awaken Athena's divine cloth. Athena's divine cloth? Seiya asked. The goddess has a cloth too? Of course, Axis said. Why wouldn't she? The sea generals have scales, the specters have surplices, and Athena, as a main deity, has a divine cloth. There's even a statue of it, a giant statue of Athena, but it's sealed. It required Athena's blood to unseal. Iolia and the 4 bronze saints exchanged uneasy looks. Axis continued, casually, if you want it unsealed, you don't need to read ancient tomes. You need Athena to bleed. That's why popes kept it secret. Secret my foot, Axis added. I'm a god too. I'll trade favors with Athena. I can help you win this holy war if you take me to the goddess temple after the 12 houses. Saga, already furious, lashed out. He unleashed a Galaxian explosion to silence Axis, but a man in a red cape and blue tights stepped between them, stopping the attack. Quiet, the man said. Don't disturb the boss. Before they could decide what to do with Axis, Saga's strength faltered. His colors dimmed. The temporary life the Underworld King had granted him wavered and then vanished. He sagged, all spirit draining from him. Hades already knows, he said, voice thin, the sentence more accusation than explanation. Chapter 443, Alliance with Athena, condition, kill. Pluto. Alliance with Athena, condition, kill Pluto. Saga's words had barely left his lips when his tall frame lurched violently. Cracks spidered across his surplice, widening and spreading in an instant. A deep darnergy, steeped in the chill of death, began to drain from him like a retreating tide. His powerful Cosmo flickered like a candle in the wind, rapidly dimming toward extinction. Ugh! Saga clutched his chest and sank to one knee. Fragments of his surplice clattered to the ground as the false life granted to him began to ebb away. He looked up at Axis through the mask, eyes clouded with a bitter mix of reluctance and an odd relief. Hades, he already knows. Damn it, Shion-sama's plan is exposed. His voice was a whisper. Each breath seemed to cost him everything. At almost the same moment, the same anomaly struck Kamu and Shura, trapped beneath rubble. Their remaining life force was wrenched away as if gripped by an invisible hand. Their surpluses disintegrated completely, revealing pale, scarred bodies as the shadow of death closed over them. The false life Hades had granted, gifted by the king of the underworld, was being mercilessly reclaimed when their mission had failed and their secret was revealed. Saga! Camus! Shura! Iolia cried, shock and helpless grief in his voice. He understood the implication. These three former comrades, now labeled traitors, were on the verge of true death once more. The four bronze saints stood frozen. Saya clenched his fists. How could this be? Just as the consciousness of Saga and the others began to slip into darkness and their life flames nearly guttered out, Axis moved. He stepped forward, appearing between the three as if he had teleported. He raised his palms, and a vast, pure emerald light of life energy surged from them, warm and full of vitality, washing over Saga, Camus, and Shura like a spring. If it weren't for forging an alliance with Athena, Axis wouldn't have wasted a drop of his power. The divine energy inside him had been uneasy since he arrived. Even a small expenditure of life energy made it ripple. Still, inside Athena's barrier, his power seemed to settle, which pleased him. The emerald lifelight seeped into their bodies like the most effective cardiac stimulant, plugging the rapidly widening gap in their life forces. Hades' death curse and Axis's life energy clashed, wearing each other down. But the life energy coiled around the three souls like tenacious vines, holding them back from the brink. The violently twitching bodies of Saga, Camus, and Shura calmed almost instantly. Their ragged gasps steadied, and the pallor of death was replaced by the faintest hint of color. Severely wounded and far from healed, they were nonetheless no longer dying, their lives sustained by a thin thread. It was only a temporary hold. Axis had not fully revived them. That required a far greater power than the little life energy he had expended. What? Iolia and the four bronze saints were stunned anew. This stranger not only knew the sanctuary's deepest secrets, he had resisted Hades' death curse and dragged Saga and the others back from the edge of oblivion. It was inconceivable. Pathetic king of the underworld. His life is so stingy and fake. Our boss is stronger. He can reverse Hades' false life, Overlord sneered, folding his arms and smirking at Axis. The prospect of a new leader had its perks, it seemed. Axis withdrew his hands and the life energy's glow ebbed. He regarded Iolia, who stood astonished and wary, and the others equally surprised. His tone was calm but carried undeniable authority. "Do you see?" he said. "If I had wanted to, I could have stood aside and let them die, or ordered my subordinates to crush all of you. I didn't. I came to form an alliance with Athena. Now, quickly take me to her." He pointed to Saga and the others, their breaths weak but steady. "I have temporarily preserved their lives, but this is only a stopgap. Hades' curse is deeply rooted. Only a powerful divinity that truly controls life and death can purge it. In this sanctuary, the only one who can do that is your goddess, Athena." A gentle female voice echoed through the palace. "I'm very sorry, but even I cannot do that on my own. As a god from another world, the cycle of life and death isn't entirely within my control." The voice was Saori Kido's, Athena herself. "Goddess, what would you have us do?" Iolia immediately dropped to one knee. "You have done well, Iolia. Bring them to my palace," Athena replied. At this critical moment in the Holy War, a god from another world appeared unexpectedly and had not even awakened his divine Cosmo. Athena was intrigued. Wasn't the divine Cosmo something gods possessed from birth? She planned to meet this mysterious deity and find out his true intentions. "But goddess, I must guard the Leo temple. Let Saya and the others take them to you," Iolia protested. Normally he would obey the goddess gladly, but specters had attacked the zodiac temples. As the Leo Gold Saint, he could not abandon his post without authorization. "Iolia, you send these three up. We'll hold the line here and keep the enemies from passing the Leo temple," the four bronze saints insisted. "You're bronze saints. Guarding the zodiac temples is the duty of the gold saints," Iolia replied. "It's fine. I'll have Overlord stay. With him here, no one will get through, unless Hades himself comes," Axis said with a smile. "Then I'll leave this to you, Iolia. Hand the Leo temple over to Mr. Overlord to guard. Shiryu, Saya, Hyoga, Shun, remain here to help." Athena's decision was firm. "Take Saga, Camus, and Shura to my palace." This unfamiliar god wielded life energy, the opposite of Hades' power. He could be a natural ally. Athena, known for wisdom, could read his intent. He wanted to awaken his divine Cosmo. If she could help him do that, his life energy would be stronger and saving the three would be possible. Yes, goddess. A gold saint follows the goddess' orders without question. The Leo Temple's defense was entrusted to Overlord in name, though Aeolia secretly trusted the four bronze saints more. Shiryu, Seiya, Hyoga, Shun. The Leo Temple is yours. Let no one pass, understand? I will return as soon as I can. Don't worry, Mr. Aeolia. We'll guard the Leo Temple. Overlord will help as well. Overlord snorted, indifferent to how many weaklings might come. He was convinced of his own strength. Axis, Aeolia, and the four bronze saints hurried toward the goddess's palace, carrying the three gold saints who still clung to life. In the Virgo palace, Shaka nodded with closed eyes and cleared their path. In the Libra palace, two old friends who had not seen each other in years were engaged in a duel, but Xion suddenly collapsed for reasons Doko could not understand at first, until Athena's voice explained what had happened. Doko used his Cosmo to support his friend's failing life. When Axis and the group arrived, Doko's surprise softened into relief. Once again, Axis used life energy to hold Xion's life. The rejuvenated Doko regarded Axis with a complicated expression. Unknown deity, thank you for your help. Xion, may I impose upon you? Doko's tone mixed gratitude and worry. They all knew about the goddess's divine cloth, and that the specters were aware as well. The situation was dire. Was this holy war destined to match the difficulty of the conflict 2 centuries earlier? No need to thank me. It's a transaction, Axis said, waving it off. He could feel his power grow more restless each time he used it, even though Athena's barrier calmed it somewhat. He needed to see Athena soon. Mr. Doko, I entrust the Libra Palace to you, Aeolia said. Doko nodded. His gaze swept over Aeolia and the 4 wounded gold saints, Saga, Camus, Shura, and Xion, being carried. The safety of the goddess I entrust to you, Aeolia, he said in a low voice. Don't worry, Teacher Doko, Aeolia replied solemnly, then looked to Axis. Let's go. Axis paused as they turned to leave. Mr. Doko, one question, if I may. The group stopped, uncertain what Axis intended. Ask, Sir Deity. Anything I know that doesn't involve the Sanctuary's core secrets, I can tell you, Doko answered respectfully. He treated Axis cautiously. After all, the deity hadn't battled Athena or attempted to seize her. I want to ask about the Holy War 243 years ago. In the last Holy War, who was the Pisces Gold Saint? Axis had originally meant to ask about the former Pegasus Saint, but the names there were ambiguous across continuities. To determine whether this world continued the Lost Canvas timeline or another branch, he only needed the name of any Gold Saint. He picked Pisces because Alba Fica had made a deep impression on him. Everyone looked puzzled at the unexpected question. I can answer that. The previous Pisces Gold Saint was Albafica. Any other questions, Lord Deity? Thank you, Libra Gold Saint. No more questions. Axis nodded. So this world was a continuation of the Lost Canvas, an extended world of that prequel. Memories of how Xion had departed for the Sanctuary at the end of the Lost Canvas and how the Saint Seiya universe could encompass parallel worlds flickered through his mind. The god of time in some stories had spoken of multiple universes, different fates for Athena and her saints, and a single looming outcome, destruction by the god of darkness, Abzus, unless some rare branches, like Omegas, diverged. Then let us continue, Axis said. They hurried from the Libra Palace up the stone steps to Scorpio. Milo of Scorpio allowed them passage with respect. With no Sagittarius Gold Saint guarding the 9th house, they moved through quickly, then past Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, and finally the Pope's palace. At last they reached Athena's palace. Athena awaited them, and beside her knelt a blue-clad man, Gemini Darkstar Canaan, the second master. We finally meet, Goddess Athena, Axis breathed, relief washing over him. He had to persuade her to help awaken his divine Cosmo. He felt a childish nostalgia at seeing the goddess of his childhood stories. Everyone had dreams like that. Athena's appearance combined Eastern and Western beauty, violet hair, a graceful figure, a sacred presence. Axis sensed her power was formidable, comparable to the spirit race's life goddess he had known, and far greater than many gods he had met. Her body was also strange. Like Hades, she was a reincarnated being, but Athena's form was genuinely divine. Hades had seized a human vessel, Athena had willingly taken an infant form to descend. "Everyone else, wait outside for now. Come with me, Your Highness Axis. I would like to speak with you alone," Athena told the group. She was curious about this foreign god. "But goddess, leave at least one guard. I must protect you," Aeolia pleaded, uneasy at leaving the goddess with someone unknown. "Thank you for your kindness, Aeolia, but I trust this gentleman will not harm me," Saori said. Aeolia bowed and retreated with Grare. The second master likewise rose and withdrew. He planned to intercept the approaching Spectre legions and wondered if the Gemini cloth would still accept him. In the palace's vast hush, Athena and Axis faced each other. Athena, startled, noted Axis's strength, almost on par with her old father, and even exceeding the current heavenly regent, Apollo. Yet this powerful deity had not awakened his Cosmo. "Hello, sir. I don't know your full name. I am Saori Kido. My divine name is Athena. Call me whichever you prefer," she said, stepping forward and bowing. "My name is Axis, goddess Athena," he answered truthfully. "So, Mr. Axis, you came because you want me to help you awaken your divine Cosmo?" Athena asked. "Yes, I'll be direct. I'm not a deity of this world. I come from another. After arriving, my divine power felt like it would explode. I can only suppress it using another power within me. When I entered your temple, that restless feeling eased significantly. I want to learn divine Cosmo." "I understand your request, Mr. Axis." Athena's expression grew serious. "I can expend my own divine Cosmo and engage in a spiritual resonance with you, a divine communion. I can help you awaken your divine Cosmo, but it will consume a great portion of my divine power. In return, I need your help to kill Hades. Can you accept that condition?" Athena nodded and placed a hand on Axis's head, carefully sensing his condition. The divine power within him startled her. It was on the level of a primordial god, far above a chief god or god king, and even among primordial gods, it ranked near the top. He stood on the verge of breaking through to absolute godhood, a universe creator, a top-tier existence capable of annihilating entire universes. Years ago, their universe's absolute god, Apis, had been driven out by primordial gods who had awakened their divine cosmos, those ancient titans Uranus, god of the sky, and Gaia, Mother Earth. Athena, Saori Kido, her violet eyes steady, looked at Axis and said slowly, "Mr. Axis, I understand your situation. The disparate, violent divine power inside you, under the rules of this cosmos, are like sparks ignited without a hearth. They're on the verge of exploding, uncontrollable. What you need is the divine cosmos. It is the foundation of our gods' existence and the source of their authority. If I help you awaken it, you will be able to master a divine cosmos of this universe." "Miss Saori, could you explain the hierarchy of gods in detail for me?" Axis asked. "No problem." Athena's voice was patient. "In our world, everything is composed of cosmos. It is life, soul, energy, the universe itself. A mortal's cosmos is fueled by burning their will and life. A god's is born with a divine cosmos. It's the core of divinity, the expression of authority, and the bridge by which a god resonates with the universe. Normally, a cosmos is powered by divine energy, not by a human's life force. Humans feed their furnace with will and life. Gods light nuclear fusion. If a mortal's cosmos is a fire furnace, a god's is a nuclear reactor. That's why, theoretically, no matter how strong a mortal becomes, they cannot rival a god unless aided by a god, awakened into a god cloth, or granted part of a god's power. There is another way, though, comprehending the legendary Omega Cosmos that harkens to the beginning of creation. That level can birth universes and could defeat most beings except supergods and absolute gods." Axis listened, nodding. "So that was it. He had nuclear fusion-level fuel without a proper furnace." Athena continued and laid out the divine hierarchy. Third-tier gods, like the dream god Oneiros or the goddess of calamity, have divinity but limited power, often serving as enforcers of rules or domain avatars. Second-tier gods, Thanatos, Hypnos, Hecate, are direct lieutenants to chief gods. They command great divine power over whole domains, acting as executors of the chief god's will. First-tier gods or chief gods, Hades, Poseidon, myself, wield core universal authorities and possess the highest divine cosmos. Primordial gods, Gaia, Uranus, Tartarus, are ancient creators of cosmic structure. Their power is unfathomable, and they typically remain secluded. The current Zeus is in that state, though he vanished years ago. Above them are absolute gods, like Apis, once a universal sovereign, beings that can create or destroy a single universe. And beyond or outside that are supergods, time and concept beings like Kronos, whose reach extends across the multiverse and who can formulate and observe rules. So divine power determines everything? Axis asked. A primordial god is stronger than a chief god, and an absolute god stronger than a primordial? If you only compare raw divine power, absolute gods are stronger, Athena conceded. But combat is not so simple. An absolute god might not beat some primordial god in specific conditions. Our absolute opus was driven out by primordial gods working together. Power categories can't account for all circumstances. She gave an example. During the First Holy War, a bronze saint touched by divine blood became a miracle. He gained a god cloth and wounded Hades' true body. That warrior was continually reincarnated. His might remained Athena's most powerful weapon. Pegasus, the god killer. He exceeded ordinary third-tier gods and even many second-tier ones, yet he was fundamentally mortal. Axis's own power, she sensed, was terrifyingly destructive. If unleashed, it could rend heaven and earth. The energy within you is beyond chief gods, approaching or even touching absolute power, but you're a little short of true absolute status, Athena said. Axis agreed. An absolute could create a universe. Axis could not, though he could destroy one at the cost of everything. He belonged among the primordial class by nature, but because of the god of destruction's blessing, his divine power was exceptionally strong. What you lack, Athena said, is the key to making your power operate correctly in this universe, the awakening and mastery of a divine cosmos. She stepped closer. Her own divine cosmos unfurled like a warm tide, actively reaching for Axis. To order the chaotic, foreign divine power inside you into a divine cosmos of this universe requires deep spiritual resonance and guidance. I will use my divine cosmos to perform a divine communion with you, a fusion of spirit and divine energy that goes beyond words and touches the soul's source. It will cost me a vast amount of divine power and carries risks. Both of us must hold nothing back. Are you willing? What do you mean by both of us holding nothing back? Axis asked. Literally that, Athena said. If anything goes wrong, we could both be killed by the divine power we meddle with. You must unreservedly open yourself to me, and I will do my utmost to guide and contain it. Axis produced a first-generation spirit tree fruit and handed it to her. The fruit thrummed with potent life energy and even a trace of divinity. Athena's eyes brightened. This contains tremendous life energy. With it, I can push my divine power farther, strengthen my divine cosmos. Then let's begin, Axis said. I can't wait. One last thing, Athena said firmly. You must promise that once you awaken and master your divine cosmos, you will help me end this holy war for good by killing Hades, king of the underworld. He lusts for the earth and enslaves the souls of the dead. His existence is an eternal threat. Only by destroying the source of his corruption can true peace be restored. Can you accept this condition? Axis had not agreed earlier, so she clarified, wise and cautious. He nodded. No problem. Once my divine cosmos awakens, I will help you kill Hades. For him it was a trivial favor. Saiyans did not collect debts. Athena smiled, sat cross-legged before him, and they clasped palms. Her divine soul ignited, pouring out divine power until her divine cosmos shone like a vast golden sun. She began to guide the wild energies inside Axis. Axis's divine power had many origins: the Super Saiyan God, the Warhammer God of War, life force comprehension from the Dragon Ball world, the fruit of gods, primal, raw, and turbulent. For Athena, it was relatively straightforward to shepherd. Golden light wrapped them both. Athena's consciousness, pure and majestic, emitted tough golden filaments that entwined with Axis's raging divine sources. The divine communion had begun. Axis grunted, his body tense. The sensation was alien, like his soul being peeled open, his deepest secrets exposed. At the same time, a huge, calming force began to organize the tumultuous energies within him. His awareness was drawn into a strange, luminous realm where he saw Athena's memories, her birth from Zeus's skull in golden armor, the aegis and spear of victory in hand, her claim to wisdom and power. He witnessed her mediation among the Olympians, the inheritance from Gaia, the guardian mantle of Earth, her conflicts with Ares, Poseidon, and Hades, and her protection of humanity across endless cycles of holy wars. He felt her sorrow, the accident that killed her friend Pallas, the regret even a goddess could not erase. Athena, for her part, realized she could only see Axis's life from the moment he came to this world. His prior history wasn't written in the cosmos. What had been a mutual opening had become a one-sided revelation. It confirmed her suspicion. Axis was a god from another world. "You've gained a huge advantage, Lord Axis," Athena's divine soul observed in its warm, commanding tone as she continued guiding his power. Their divine souls intertwined in a deep communion, something akin to the Eastern idea of dual cultivation, but purer and spiritual. Axis had not expected such intimacy. This exchange of divine power and spirit was more intimate than some acts of mortal procreation. He finally understood why Athena had stressed her inexperience with this. Perhaps it truly was a first for the virgin goddess. A startled, irreverent thought crossed his mind. Ahem, I have 2 wives. He had chosen Athena well. Had he asked Hades or Poseidon, he shuddered at the idea of competing with 2 large, jealous men. Athena's divine consciousness, like a master weaver, continued to shape Axis's chaos. Where there's 1, there's 2. Where 2 grows, 3 may follow. Axis said lightly, I'll take responsibility. The crucial moment is near, Athena warned. You must restrain and then release everything at once. Form your cosmos like a big bang. Her pressure and guidance pushed Axis's divine force ever higher. The sensation was maddening, like reaching an explosive peak of primal energy. Axis thought, absurdly, that the awakening felt lustful, bawdy, and ridiculous, but the imagery helped him endure. I'll try my best, he said. Time blurred in the realm of communion. Inside the goddess's temple, the fate-deciding ritual continued, but outside, the sky above the sanctuary suddenly darkened. Thick, deathly clouds roiled overhead, a chill despair pressing down as if tangible. 3 figures, exuding a terrifying, death-like pressure, descended onto the plaza before the Leo temple. Wyvern Rhadamanthys of the heavenly fierce star, Garuda Iacos of the heavenly heroic star, Griffin Minos of the heavenly noble star. The 3 judges of the underworld were here. Behind them surged a black tide of specter soldiers, earthly stars, heavenly stars, and rank-and-file soldiers in grotesque, skeletal surplices. Their presence stained the sanctuary with the cosmos of death. By the order of Lord Hades, Rhadamanthys declared, his voice like ice from the abyss. Athena's head will be taken by us, the 3 judges, personally. He spat contempt at the saints, traitors in his eyes, who merely sought Athena's divine cloth. Finally, some decent cannon fodder has arrived, someone chuckled from the air. Ultraman hovered with a ferocious grin, arms crossed. Seiya, Shiryu, Hyoga, and Shun flared their cosmos and stood ready. Aeolia was absent, and they felt the heavy burden of guarding the Leo temple. Specters! You shall not pass the Leo temple, Seiya roared, his Pegasus cloth gleaming. Shiryu raised his dragon shield. Hyoga's body radiated a cutting chill. Shun's nebula chain danced like a spirit snake. Foolish brats who don't know their place, Rhadamanthys sneered. He struck first, a massive wave of death impact, a world-ending torrent hurled at Seiya and the saints in the vanguard. Let me. Ultraman laughed and vanished from sight. He reappeared before the impact and slammed a colossal, raw-fist strike into the gray torrent as if driving a pile into earth. Boom. A deafening roar rolled across the Leo Temple Plaza. The ground cracked, stones shattered, and flew like bullets. Rhadamanthys' ultimate technique was blown apart by Ultraman's single brutish punch. The scattered shockwaves sent lower specters sprawling. Rhadamanthys' eyes narrowed in disbelief. What are you doing? I expected more. Ultraman shrugged. You're nowhere near as strong as that Saga kid was just now, he said, disappointed. His strike paled compared to Saga's galactic explosion. Iacos took advantage of the opening. Galactic illusion, he cried, beating his enormous wings and unleashing countless starry phantoms to envelop Ultraman. It was not a physical blow, but a mental assault meant to distort perception and crush resolve. Ultraman snorted, his eyes flared crimson. Beams of heat vision, lanced out like branding irons, cutting through the starry illusions. The illusion melted under the intense heat, then the rays kept going, aimed at Iacos' body. Being struck would mean certain destruction. At that moment, the third judge acted. Cosmic marionette, he shouted. Minos's fingers moved like a dancer's, and countless almost invisible threads, woven from stellar gravity itself, snapped out and wrapped around Superboy's limbs and joints. This was control incarnate. Once entangled, life and death answered to Minos. Even powerful gold saints could not break his bindings. To him, the mighty being before him was nothing more than a puppet ready to obey. "A brainless fool, I'll teach you," Minos began, then stopped in astonishment. Superboy snorted coldly and began to push back with raw, brutal force. Heavenly Noble Star Minos, one of the three judges of the underworld, prided himself on his cosmic puppet threads. They had ensnared the foe, but this opponent simply began ripping them apart with sheer power. Threads that could bind gold saints shredded like straw ropes under his strength. "These magic ropes are interesting but useless against me," Superboy said, patting his chest casually. As an inheritor of a power race, his resistance to magic was far higher than another world's Superman. Cosmo, with its quasi-magical nature, had little effect on him. "What kind of monster is this?" the surrounding specters murmured, stunned. They had expected that the three judges acting together could quickly finish this man, but instead, each of the three was meeting unexpected resistance. "You're incredible, Superboy," someone breathed. He didn't even use Cosmo and still did this with pure physical might. The four bronze saints watching were elated. "Don't even think about breaking through the Leo Temple," they cried. Superboy roared and charged at the three judges like a wild animal. His style was simple, crude even, but devastating. Sonic booms trailed behind him as his fist, able to rip space, smashed toward Rhadamanthus. Supersonic attacks were no mystery to warriors who had awakened the seventh sense. They saw him coming and reacted. Rhadamanthus roared and threw both fists forward, his dark Cosmo burning to its limit. "Greatest caution," he screamed. A shockwave far more powerful than anything before met Superboy head-on. The collision rocked the area, walls and pillars of the Leo Temple cracked, and Rhadamanthus staggered back, his arms numb and his surplice creaking with fissures. But Superboy barely flinched. He grinned and lunged again, his body's strength shrugged off the shockwave's damage. "The three of us will handle him," Iacos declared. "Minos, hold back the others so they can pass through the Leo Temple." "Understood, my lords. We'll act now," Minos barked. "Take this monster. The three judges of the underworld are your foes now," they shouted in unison. While the judges battled, a black tide of specters surged toward the Leo Temple's entrance, trying to break the bronze saints with that line and rush onto the palaces beyond. "You shall not pass. Pegasus Ryusaken," Seiya shouted. "Rozan Shoryu, ha!" Shiryu yelled. "Diamond Dust, Hyoga. Nebula Chain, Shun." The four bronze saints poured their Cosmo into the oncoming wave. Cloths and surplices clashed, fistlight tangled with death energy. These weren't ordinary bronze saints now. After the 12 Zodiac trials, the Asgard battles, and the Undersea Temple War, Seiya, Shiryu, Hyoga, and Shun could each raise their Cosmo to the level of a seventh sense gold saint, even without fully erupting. Their bronze cloths, however, had been badly damaged, limiting them to the output of an ordinary gold saint, but even that was beyond what most specters could withstand. With their destructive Cosmo pushing back the swarm, the Leo Temple held. Inside the goddess's palace, the conflict outside barely registered. Athena's golden divine consciousness, delicate and vast like a cosmic loom, threaded and reordered the chaotic energies inside Axis's body. The deep purple of the god of destruction, the alien hues of otherworldly divine power, the emerald of life's essence. Under Athena's guiding Cosmo, they began to obey an ancient primordial rhythm, the very pulse of a god. Axis groaned and involuntarily tensed. He felt his divine power being reshaped, not painful, but ecstatic and burning, as if an entire universe raged inside him with no outlet. Under Athena's precise guidance, the suppressed power inside Axis reached a new equilibrium. Not a collapse, but a singularity shifting from annihilation to creation. Then Axis's eyes flew open. His pupils were no longer human. Each had become a spinning, boundless miniature universe. Nebulae flowed inside them. Galaxies were born and died in an instant. A fluctuation erupted from him. No mere physical shock, but an explosion of pure energy and cosmic law, like a big bang. The entire goddess's palace, and indeed the sanctuary and the rules governing Earth, shuddered. Space around Axis twisted and tore as pinpricks of light blinked into being like first dawns, rapidly swelling into swirling nebulae, burning stars, and nascent galaxies. A miniature, fast-evolving phantom universe formed around Axis, and the palace itself became a faint backdrop. Even Athena's golden radiance dimmed against this new cosmic light. Axis's cosmos surged, a vast primordial divine power that carried the meaning of endless birth and death. This was not Athena's wisdom or protective divinity. It was more ancient, closer to the origin of everything. The sanctuary's barrier shrieked in strain. Gaia's ancient seal flared, trying to suppress the outburst. The gold cloths of the 12 zodiac palaces, whether worn or not, erupted in unprecedented golden resonance, as if paying homage to this newborn god while simultaneously resisting the violent pressure. Far from the temple, Superboy, the 3 judges, and every combatant in front of the Leo temple felt the change and froze. A shiver ran to their very souls. A new, powerful, unknown god had been born. Even Hades himself seemed to pale. Lightning plasma fist. Aeolia, the true guardian of the Leo temple, had returned. His gold cloth flared with a golden light. Strange though it was, the gold cloths should respond only to Athena. They reacted to this otherworldly god. Across the sanctuary, other surviving gold saints experienced the same uncanny familiarity with Axis's Cosmo, as if it were linked to Athena's own. What is this? Why does this Cosmo feel like the goddesses? The specters hissed, faces grim. For a moment, the battlefield grew quiet. The 3 judges lay badly hurt. Rhadamanthus had been struck brutal blows, Minos's arm was torn, and a great wound gaped across his chest. Iacchos, barely holding on, had been pushed to his limits. They had never expected a mortal to be this powerful. Even so, specters ordinarily resurrected under Hades unless sealed. The badly injured would recover quickly, unless something sealed them. Shaka of Virgo, meditating nearby, opened his eyes, considering whether to go to the Leo temple to help seal specters, when a wave of terrifying Cosmo transmitted through the air. Athena's hand, resting on Axis's forehead, was gently but irresistibly pushed aside. She staggered back, pale and suddenly weak. Guiding Axis had drained an unimaginable amount of her divine power. Yet in her violet eyes there was shock, awe, and an unmistakable thrill. This was not an ordinary awakening, but the birth of a primordial god. The heterogeneous divine power contained in Axis far exceeded her estimates. He had awakened both creation and destruction. Axis floated, feet off the ground, wrapped in the evolving cosmic light. Galaxies spun in his hair. Each strand seemed to contain a star system. In his palm, a chaotic orb shifted, sometimes a black hole devouring all, sometimes a nurturing nebula. He felt incomparable power, the energy of the god of destruction, divine power, even the key of the Dragon Ball world fueling his divine cosmo. Gods in this world burned only divine power to drive their cosmo. He could draw from multiple worlds and sources, making his cosmo far greater. Divine Cosmo, Athena, thank you, he said softly and clenched his fist. He had grown several times stronger with this awakening. You are welcome, Axis. We are in this together. I am your goddess, Athena replied with a tired smile. Rather than nurturing a Pegasus saint, she had chosen a primordial, or half-step absolute god. Axis's mouth twitched at the implication. He now had, inexplicably, a goddess as a wife. A divine pressure, like an invisible mountain, descended on every living being before the Leo temple. An irresistible primordial might struck like a cosmic judge. Bodies trembled, faces drained of color. Superboy, the 4 bronze saints, the specters, elite heavenly stars and foot soldiers alike, crumpled, knees buckled, and fell. Frozen, unable to move even a finger, they felt a tearing fear from the depths of their souls. This was the pressure of a primordial god, beyond any level 1 main god, a will as vast as the universe itself. Rhadamanthus struggled to raise his head and stared toward the goddess's palace in disbelief. This pressure surpassed even Hades' deathly might. This is the power of that otherworld god. Iacchos' wings drooped. Pride had left his face and only fear remained. Superboy felt the cosmic pressure as well. Grail's omega eyes flared a new crimson. Her body trembled and she healed. As a demigod, she barely resisted. This power, this proximity to the universe's origin, was more ancient and pure than her father Darkseid's Omega Force. It stirred in her the single certainty of whom she should follow. After a heavy, death-like silence, the divine pressure receded like a tide, returning toward the goddess's palace. But the battlefield did not immediately recover. Specters lay motionless, eyes vacant as if their souls had been plucked. The 3 judges, pale and shaken, exchanged worried looks. Seiya and the others forced themselves to stand, bewildered. Shaka, nearest to the gods, understood at once. A new, powerful god had descended on their side. The tide of the holy war might be turning. Axis then reached into his possessions and withdrew his last treasured god fruit. "You should rest. I will handle the others. This fruit is for you. It's a god fruit that can help you break through to the primordial god realm," he said, offering it to Athena. She had expended nearly all her power helping him and was perilously close to collapse. Given their new relationship, Axis would not be stingy. Athena looked at the fruit, which pulsed with unmatched vitality and divine energy. If she consumed it, her divine body and powers could evolve from a level 1 main god to a primordial god. Where Axis had obtained such a miracle remained unknown, but the gift was accepted with a grateful smile. "Then I won't be polite," Athena said. "I'll take care of something first. After you consume this, you should be able to awaken those 4 guys." The god fruit's life power could also revive Saga and the others. Chapter 446. Athena evolves. Axis's divine cloth. Athena held the god fruit, which radiated a vast, life-filled divine light, and carefully felt the power within it. It far exceeded anything she had imagined. With primordial creative power and terrifying divinity wrapped into a single fruit, she could see how even an ordinary mortal might become a god king by eating it, provided they could digest that divine power. To absorb what this fruit contained required at least the level of a level 1 god, a main god. A flash of uncontrollable excitement crossed Athena's violet eyes. To break free from the limits of a main god and ascend into the realm of a primordial god, this was the dream of every Olympian. She had never expected to encounter such an opportunity, and she did not hesitate. She put the fruit to her lips. The god fruit melted at contact and turned into a warm, majestic torrent of divine power that swept through her depleted divine body, worn thin from guiding Axis. The sensation was like parched earth receiving the dew of creation. Her weakened golden minor cosmos flared like a newly lit star, erupting with unprecedented light. Under this nourishment, the core of her divinity, war and wisdom, began a slow, steady transformation. Traces of an older, more primordial divinity, closer to the origins of the world, budded and grew. Athena sat cross-legged, eyes closed, enveloped in a dense golden light like a cocoon, undergoing a crucial evolution. She began to rise from a level 1 god toward a supreme primordial god. Her status as a main god was now all but certain. Main gods came in strengths both weak and powerful. Athena was not necessarily the strongest among them. After Zeus vanished, rule of Olympus had fallen to Apollo, the sun god, whose divine minor cosmos was nearly at the ceiling of a level 1 god, infinitely close to primordial. Yet even the most perfect sun god might never break into the primordial, unless it was the era when the heavens and earth were first born. A primordial god was fundamentally different and almost impossible to reach in normal times. But Axis's fruit had granted her a direct path from level 1 to primordial. As the goddess of war and wisdom, Athena had, for the first time, actively sought out a male god. She had not thought highly of earlier gods. They had been her equals at best, or inferior. Axis was different. He had come to her proactively because, for reasons she and he barely understood, he had sensed a crisis approaching in about a dozen years. Without a solution, this world and its Athena would face annihilation by the god of darkness, Apsu. Many Athenas in other universes had perished to that absolute god. This Athena would be no exception if Axis had not appeared. Axis pulled his gaze inward, feeling the endless pulse of his minor cosmos, the origin, thrumming through him. It was time to clean up the trash. With his current power, Hades, king of the underworld, was insignificant. Axis had grown enormously. His divine body had evolved far beyond the level of a god of destruction. The destructive energy of a god of destruction, the vast divine power he had taken from the DC multiverse, and the chi energy from the Dragon Ball world were now fused and perfectly controlled by his minor cosmos, origin, as if they were extensions of his limbs. In the DC world, he had absorbed Xantia's power, and thus the god's power. Through his divine minor cosmos, that power had become his own. Now, beyond Saiyan's strength, his divine power included divine forces from the DC universe as well. Axis could freely burn his minor cosmos. In a normal state, it utterly overwhelmed mortal strength. If needed, he could mix chi energy, DC divine power, Dragon Ball Divine Power and God of Destruction energy into his minor cosmos for combustion. In sheer destructive capability, Axis was not even inferior to an absolute god. Of course, true strength would only be proven in combat. He wondered how strong the God of Darkness in this universe truly was. Axis had gained the DC Universe's power, and thus could seize the divine power of any slain deity. He longed to test himself on Apsu, to kill the creator-level God of Darkness, to reach the peak of a single universe level and attain the ability to create or destroy a cosmos. But Apsu would not descend into this world for another dozen years. For now, planning could begin. Axis moved and vanished from the goddess palace, heading to the battlefield with the intention of making an entrance. As a god, he felt he should have divine armor. During his divine communion with Athena, Axis had seen most of her memories and knew the method to forge a sacred cloth. The materials were not exotic. Spectre's surplices used black gems from the underworld, Poseidon's scale mail used orichalcum, and Athena's cloth combined stardust with great quantities of orichalcum. Some designs even absorbed sunlight, which is why the 12 gold cloths shone. As a primordial god and a world king god in authority, Axis could easily form orichalcum and even rarer materials from divine power. He crafted a magnificent sacred cloth that nearly covered his entire body, leaving only his head exposed. For a weapon, he forged a sword. Traditionally, a Saiyan might not carry a weapon, but other gods bore arms. It would look lacking otherwise. Axis had been skilled with large, two-handed swords since the Great Crusade and had used chainswords during his Space Marines days. Now, with his divine minor cosmos, a single casual swing could cleave a star system. A full-force strike might even rend a universe. The prototype of the divine sacred cloth was a perfect shell of divine-grade material, but it lacked a soul and life. In Saint Seiya's world, materials were secondary. True transformation of a sacred cloth came from one's minor cosmos and blood. Even ordinary blood could give life to a cloth. A god's blood could perform miracles. Athena's divine blood could elevate a bronze cloth to a divine cloth far beyond a gold cloth, if only temporarily, able to beat a level 2 god. Axis's divine blood, however, as a primordial god, promised to bring this god cloth far beyond the armors of the 12 Olympian great gods. The armors worn by Athena, Hades, and Poseidon were not the originals forged by Hephaestus. The original armors of the 12 gods had vanished with Zeus. Axis raised his right hand, pressed his fingers to a blade-like position, and sliced across his left palm without hesitation. There was no mortal spray of blood. From the cut flowed not blood, but a dazzling stream of divine light, deep purple, golden red, emerald green, and chaotic starlight. The stream seemed composed of countless rotating miniature galaxies, dying nebula and forming new ones, and leaping bolts of creative lightning. It emanated soul-shaking primordial divinity, boundless vitality, and terrifying power. It was the divine blood of the primordial god Axis, infused with God of Destruction energy, DC divine power, the Dragon Ball world's chi, and the origin of his minor cosmos. Like a living thing, the divine stream flew to the nascent god cloth suspended in the air. The moment it touched the cold orichalcum and stardust, the first thunderclap of creation seemed to explode above the sanctuary. The sanctuary and even Earth's space trembled. The sky turned into a magnificent chaos of colors, and countless phantom stars, unseen by human astronomy, flickered across the firmament. Mortals had no idea what was happening, but divine beings sensed that an incredibly powerful artifact was being born. The nascent god cloth erupted with light billions of times brighter than the sun. Axis, a Super Saiyan, chose gold, blue, and red for his armor, and forged his sword in a purple hue, into which he poured the power of the god of destruction. Wherever his divine blood touched, the orichalcum greedily absorbed creative power. Its structure was reconfigured and sublimated at the quantum level, its hardness and conductivity multiplied. The divine blood inscribed intricate runes and patterns across the armor, as if an expert runemaster wrote the universe's ultimate truths. Deep purple runes of God of Destruction energy coiled like serpents of annihilation. DC divine power formed a complex defensive matrix. Dragon Ball Chi braided into blue patterns. Emerald green life energy networks wove across the joints to provide endless regeneration. At the core of all patterns was a constantly rotating chaotic nebula, the mark of the origin minor cosmos. The god cloth had come to life. It was no longer mere metal. It was an extension of Axis's divine body and spirit. In the ethereal realm, Axis established a bond with it. The cloth could decompose and recombine itself like living metal, wrapping itself over him in an instant. Axis stood at the pinnacle of the sanctuary, clad in that magnificent god cloth, streaked with chaotic starlight and flowing runes of creation and destruction. The two-handed greatsword, bathed in divine blood, flowed with purple destructive power like a sealed galaxy, the space at its edge warped subtly. Every inch of the cloth radiated a primordial might that made heaven and earth pale. The oppressive pressure left those below, who had just tasted divine power, gasping for breath. The surviving gold cloths of the 12 zodiac palaces resonated in an unprecedented golden chorus, as if paying homage to this newborn deity and his supreme god cloth. With a flash, Axis, wearing his newly forged god cloth, appeared in the Leo Palace. Ultraman grinned. "Ha ha! This really suits the boss. So cool." The splendor of the armor made even Ultraman envious. It was impossibly cool. The deathly silence on the battlefield shattered as the specters looked up at the magnificent figure, a surge of endless fear rising within them. The three judges barely suppressed tremors deep in their souls. Radamanthys clutched his broken arm and roared, "Damn it! What if there's a new god? For Lord Hades, charge! Kill them all! Offer the bodies of these blasphemers to the king of the underworld. We are immortal. The great king of the underworld protects us." Driven by fear and loyalty, the specters howled and lunged at the defensive line formed by the four bronze saints and Ultraman. Axis's eyes swept over them faintly. With a gentle flick of his god of destruction sword, a purple halo spread out. Every specter who touched that halo was annihilated, body and soul utterly destroyed at the atomic and spiritual levels. This was a microcosmos infused with god of destruction energy. The immortal bodies, granted by Hades that even Athena could not completely break and could only seal, were nothing against Axis's destructive might. In the face of god of destruction power, immortality meant nothing unless one was stronger than he. He felt a brief impulse to go challenge the Grand Priest or the angels one-on-one. The Grand Priest was still beyond reach. Axis first needed multiverse-level strength. "Lord Axis, have you already come out? How is the goddess?" Aeolia asked, looking at Axis's changed aura and magnificent cloth. Had this unfamiliar deity gone to help Athena forge her cloth? It seemed possible. After all, the method used matched the saints' techniques, not those of the underworld or sea realm. "How should I put it? The specifics can wait until your goddess awakens. Briefly, I will help Athena win this battle and finish off King Hades," Axis said, stroking his chin. He kept silent about the more intimate truth that Athena had been with him, directly telling the saints that their chaste goddess was spiritually united with this man might be too much for them. Athena had eaten the god fruit and might need another night to fully integrate and complete her evolution into a primordial god. Until then, Axis intended to cut off Hades' head. The saints present were stunned. After Axis descended, gold saints from other palaces arrived, including a certain Phoenix saint. "Lord Axis, goddess, what's wrong with her?" someone asked. "Miss Sorry, how? Is she okay?" the 5 bronze saints asked anxiously. "Athena is perfectly fine. I gave her a gift. She's absorbing a new power and will soon emerge as a primordial god. You'll see when she wakes," Axis said, shrugging. "I understand, Lord Axis. We will await the goddess's awakening," Libra Doko said at last. Just moments earlier, Athena's microcosmos had been weak. Now it shone terrifyingly bright and continued to grow. He did not know what had occurred, but it had to be good. Athena was evolving. "Lord Axis, since you've settled this, can you also deal with my matter?" Grail asked. "Your matter can wait until I return. I have something to do right now," Axis replied. Grail nodded. She had no choice but to obey. She had long since learned obedience. "What about Ultraman?" He remained compliant. Axis planned to use his World King God authority to enthrone Ultraman as a god and make him a subordinate deity. Ultraman's combat power was solid. Once godhood awakened his minor cosmos, he could fight nearly as well as a level 1 main god. "King of the underworld Hades," Axis said, voice cold, "your doomsday has arrived." Axis intended to descend into the underworld in his god cloth and take Hades' life. "Sorry, old friend Hades, Axis would be the hand that ended you." Chapter 447, said to bring down the twin gods, Hades, I don't need a second move to kill you. No one among the Gold Saints expected Axis to try to storm the underworld alone. Shouldn't this wait until Lady Athena awoke so the two of them could strike together? Didn't a god have followers, soldiers, or at least some plan? Lord Axis, the underworld is dangerous. Hades' divine power is unfathomable, and the twin gods guard him. Be careful. Doko, the senior-most Gold Saint, warned. Right, if you're going to attack Hades, you should at least prepare, Pegasus Seiya added. Why not wait for Athena, and revive Saga, Shura, and Kamu first? Ares Mu urged. Lord Axis, your strength is immense, but you only have those two fighters with you, Leo Iolia said, glancing toward Grail and Overlord. Both were formidable, but neither wore a cloth. The woman had armor, but not a cloth either. Axis waved off their concerns as if they were trifles. His gaze pierced space as if looking through layers of reality straight to Elysian, that pure land swathed in the pallor of death. "Ha-ha, careful," he said, a faint, almost contemptuous smile curling his lips. There was the cold arrogance of absolute power in it. No, Hades is the one who should be careful. Put bluntly, Axis, a god who commanded death, did not take the Hades from the Saint Seiya world seriously. When Axis had been cut off from his divine powers and the destructive energy that came with them, sure, he would have been cautious. But things had changed. His current power, amplified by his divine Cosmo, went beyond that of ordinary primordial gods and, in attack potency, rivaled absolute gods. In that light, why fear a king of the underworld? He favored his own universe's Hades even less. In that timeline, Athena had been defeated, humanity annihilated, and Hades beheaded Athena, yet Axis viewed that future as an anomaly. Grail glanced at Axis thoughtfully. Their pantheon was similar, and Hades in Grail's world was no match for Zeus. Boss, let me come with you, Overlord asked. No need. I wiped out the specters already. Hades is just a commander now, Axis replied. Lord Axis, Hades is not just a commander. He has 3 level 2 gods under him, Thanatos, Hypnos, and Khorne, Doko said. In the last holy war, he had seen a god's true power. Gold Saints were outclassed before it. Even a 4-on-1 would be dangerous when gods were involved. Don't worry. Stay and await my good news. I'll be back within one night, Axis said with a smile. Before anyone could protest, he lifted the god of destruction's greatsword, what else to call it, and casually slashed the air. The void split. Axis did not unleash his full strength. He simply used his divine Cosmo to bend spatial laws, ripping open the barrier between the sanctuary and the core of the underworld, direct access to Elysian. The divine path opened. Only certain existences could traverse it without being torn apart. Gods, or warriors in battlesuits soaked with divine blood. Mortals, even Gold Saints, would be shredded. Guard this place. Await the return of Lady Athena and Lord Axis. Doko's voice carried the weight of the Pope's command. All the saints obeyed. Overlord and Grail were escorted to the Pope's palace to wait. The divine path was like a warp channel or a pocket universe where time and space meant nothing, an extra-dimensional zone, lethal to ordinary life but irrelevant to gods. Axis stepped into it and vanished. He reappeared above Elysian like an omen. The paradise, flowers and birds, nymphs singing, looked like a garden world from myths and half-ruined temples clung to that beauty. It was Hades' court, not a true heaven for mortals. In Hades' view, ordinary humans were unworthy of entry. Axis stood out like a foreign shadow, a divine cloth blazing with chaotic starlight and runes of creation and destruction, a purple greatsword that radiated annihilation. The nymphs fell silent at the ripple of his presences, but there were no human souls to be seen. This was the realm of the underworld gods. A furious roar split the air. 2 figures manifested with crushing presence. One wore a black surplice, handsome and cold, Thanatos, god of death. The other, in a dark yellow, had drowsy eyes, Hypnos, god of sleep. They were Hades' left and right hands, the twin gods. Khorne and Persephone were not in sight. Hypnos' tone was measured, cautious. Who are you to trespass in Lord Hades' domain? Thanatos' first attitude was disdainful, but it changed when he felt Axis' power, something deeper, more unfathomable than even Hades' aura. I am Axis. No need for pleasantries. I'm here to kill Hades, king of the underworld, Axis said bluntly. Hypnos' face flickered with disbelief. What? Lord Axis, are you serious? Why would you be an enemy of Lord Hades? It matters not whether you know me. I am allied with Athena, In a way, I am her husband. You sent forces to attack the sanctuary. That was a provocation against me. A god's dignity can't be insulted. I erased the specters and have come to demand an explanation, Axis said with righteous bluntness. The words struck Thanatos and Hypnos like hammers. Axis claimed to be allied with Athena, even her husband, and he had already destroyed Hades' forces? Both gods felt his divine pressure and realized his power exceeded that of a level 1 god. He might even be a primordial or higher. Perhaps you misunderstand, Hypnos began. No misunderstanding. I'm here to settle things. Hades dies today. I said it, and no one will save him, Axis snorted. Your declaration is to declare war on the Olympian pantheon. Apollo will not stand idle, Thanatos warned through gritted teeth, hoping the sun god's prestige would intimidate this unknown power. If you think Apollo's name will save Hades, you are mistaken, Axis replied, but he softened his tone and offered a bargain. I rule an underworld universe as well. I need capable lieutenants. If you join me, I'll raise you to level 1 gods. Axis released even more of his divine aura, an unmistakable glimpse of primordial force and a trace of the god of destruction's might. The pressure was terrifying. Thanatos and Hypnos went pale. What they had assumed to be a primordial god might already be half within the realm of an absolute god. Hades had treated them like servants, rarely consulting them across the ages. They had fought a losing war with Athena, suffered defeat after defeat, and been sealed. This offer from a stronger patron promised them advancement and respect. They looked to one another and, sensing a future instead of stagnation, knelt before Axis. It seems you understand, Axis said. Will you sink with a doomed Hades or follow a sovereign who can grant you a future? You are generous, Lord Axis. One question. Can you truly elevate us to level 1 gods? Thanatos asked. That was their core concern. I always keep my promises. It will take time, but I will make you level 1 gods. You cannot run the underworld otherwise, Axis answered. With the World King god's divinity at his command, bolstering 2 gods to ordinary World King standards was trivial. If needed, there were other means, first-generation spirit tree fruit, for instance. We are willing to follow you, Thanatos and Hypnos said. Please accept our allegiance, and allow our sister, the goddess of vengeance, to join as well. Axis nodded. 1 and 1 made 3. The goddess of vengeance would be a useful addition. Then a voice like winter thunder rolled out from the deepest temple in Elysian, cold, majestic, filled with wrath. The very flower seas withered to ash. Thick, deathly clouds blotted out the sky. The power of the underworld rose in a wave that seemed to command billions of souls. Space itself protested. Axis smiled. Hades' strength was formidable among level 1 gods, but insignificant before him. Still, a response was due. The gates of Hades' temple exploded open. He stepped out, clad in a night-black god robe, the Pluto sword in hand, his handsome face burning with deadly rage. Pluto Hades, lord of the underworld, had appeared in person. You insolent foreigner! How dare you usurp my authority, defile Athena's name, and try to seduce my servants? Hades bellowed. His gaze seared Thanatos and Hypnos. Traitors, you would betray me? Thanatos and Hypnos rose, shoulder to shoulder with Axis. Pluto Hades, Axis said coolly. There's a saying from the East, a wise man yields to circumstance. A bird chooses the tree where it rests. They chose me because of your failures. You fought your niece for 1,000 years and never won. That says more about you than about them. Hades' anger swelled. Axis pressed down a divine might that made him seem already on the cusp of erasure. Your fury is only a lamentation about to end, Axis said, and then he moved. There were no fanfare explosions, no grand incantations, no named techniques, just a single, casual swing of his sword in Hades' direction. The god of destruction's energy annihilated Hades instantly. There was no chance to resist. The god, his divine body and robe, collapsed into ruin. The temple trembled under the impact. Axis sheathed his sword and smiled coldly. I don't need a second move to kill you. With a single sword strike, Hades, the lord of death, who had once struck fear into countless beings, and his indestructible god robe vanished from the chill air of Elysium as if they had never existed. Only a slowly subsiding, spinning void remained, emitting a faint suction, like the universe itself closing a tiny wound. As Hades died, Axis felt a god of death Cosmo being drawn into his own power. Hades, your life is over. Your power will belong to me, Axis sneered. activating Xantia's gift. Killing a divine being allowed one to seize its power. Axis's prize was Hades' god of death energy. Death, in Hades' case, had always been bound up with life. He could revive at will. With that ability, Axis would no longer need to summon the divine dragon in many situations. The god of death Cosmo did not dissipate. It flowed into Axis. He could feel a cold thread of death weave into his own divinity. Now he could manipulate life and death. Lord Hades is truly dead? Thanatos' voice trembled. Even though he had long ago chosen to betray, watching a main god erase so casually still shook him to the core of his being. Hades is dead. There's not even a trace left, Hypnos murmured, staring at Axis's calm figure with complicated eyes. Was this the power of an absolute-level being? To a main god like Hades, a primordial god, especially one nearing absolute, was an annihilating force. Even their offspring, born of divine blood, could rival lower gods. A primordial god killing a level 1 main god in an instant was horrible, but not impossible. A greater crisis followed. Rumble, Elysium, the paradise Hades had constructed and sustained for untold ages with his will and divinity, howled the moment its master was gone. The Pure Land's ground cracked like shattered glass. Bottomless abysses yawned open. Gardens, temples, and eternal streams conjured by Hades' power disintegrated, turning to ash. The dome of sky split, revealing the chaotic void of the underworld beyond, storm winds of death pouring through. The entire space trembled and collapsed like a tower that had lost its keystone. Lord Axis, Hypnos' face went pale. The deep structure of Elysium, even the entire underworld, rests upon Hades' divine power. With his destruction, the rules and power that hold this place together are breaking down. If this keeps going, the whole core of the underworld will collapse into nothing. The land of the dead, the judgment halls, even the imprisoned souls, everything will be annihilated. Axis nodded. In the original timeline, when Athena and the 5 bronze saints killed Hades, the underworld had similarly begun to crumble, its existence bound to its master. Without Hades, the realm would perish. But if a new master poured equal or greater divine power into its foundation, the underworld could be stabilized again. Normally, a level 1 god could not replace Hades, but Axis was no ordinary level 1. A primordial god on the cusp of absolute could. The collapse accelerated. In the distance, majestic temple clusters collapsed like sandcastles into dust. Cracks in the sky widened. Death storms shredded the last of the old paradise. Sprites, creatures sustained by Hades' divinity, wail in despair, sensing the end of their eternal home. Many of them clustered around the twin gods, seeking comfort. They had only ever played music and dance for their masters. Now they faced oblivion. "All right," Axis said, and unleashed his divine Cosmo, tentatively linking it to the crumbling underworld and Elysium. The vast, boundless origin Cosmo within him erupted, not as crushing pressure this time, but as a creative, life-filled force. The divine power he had just absorbed from Hades also flowed through him. The deep violet of destructive power formed an ordered framework. The golden-red DC energy became law chains to stabilize space. Emerald life energy spread like sweet rain, nourishing everything. The chaotic core starlight served as the driving spark. Hades' original divinity acted as the bond that let these powers merge under the origin Cosmos' command. The result was a sweeping, majestic creative divinity, like a golden ocean radiating from Axis. The collapsing underworld and Elysium halted. Abysses were stitched closed, shattered earth smoothed by an invisible hand, and new, fertile soil rose from the chaos. On the ruined shores of withered flower seas, exotic divine flora burst up from the ground and bloomed instantly, filling the air with fresh scent. Springs gurgled from deep veins, weaving into streams and mirror-clear lakes. Axis planned to make this Elysium a divine star he could carry with him. The cracked dome of sky vanished, replaced by a clear, profound vault like polished sapphire. A golden sunlight, pure life energy, not the sun, bathed the world, dispelling gloom. Hades' pale temple collapsed entirely. In its place, a grander edifice rose, blending the solemnity of ancient Greek temples with cosmic beauty. This was Axis' divine palace. With his power infused, Elysium expanded dozens of times, becoming a realm larger than Earth, more beautiful, more fertile. The chaotic laws of the underworld were reorganized and stabilized by Axis' divinity. Though Hades had died, the underworld accepted Axis' influence and began to regenerate. Because Axis himself reconstructed it, he became its absolute master. Axis's divinity was a brush upon the universe's canvas. Where Hades' hand had left ruin, Axis painted order and life. Elysium and the underworld were reshaped at breathtaking speed, their scale, vitality, and radiance far surpassing Hades' era. Thanatos and Hypnos stared in stunned silence, unable to find words. To annihilate a main god with a flick, to reshape a paradise with a thought, to recreate the underworld and improve it 100-fold, this power shattered any limits of what they had believed a god could be. They were grateful for their choice. Is this the new world you promised, Lord Axis? Hypnos' voice trembled with awe. It's perfect. Thanatos studied the vibrant garden, sense of death law now inclusive rather than oppressive. For the first time, desire gleamed in his eyes. This lord's power outclassed Hades's. Following Axis was undeniably the right decision. This is only the core, Axis said, withdrawing some of his divine power as he hovered above the new temple, looking over the embryonic paradise he had fashioned. When we reach our own world, your work will only begin. Thanatos, Hypnos. We are here, Lord. Both knelt immediately. I appoint you both to co-manage this Elysium and the newly formed underworld beneath it. Perfect what I have begun. Learn the new laws, guide the departed souls, and maintain order. When the main body of my universe is finished, you will come with me to the new divine realm and become the true rulers of this underworld. Axis's voice carried the authority of a divine decree. We obey your oracle, great Lord Axis. The twin gods answered together. Satisfied, Axis left Elysium and stepped back into the divine passage, intending to return to the surface world, with the underworld in tow. But as he passed through the passage, he sensed another divine will using the corridor. It was faint, fragile, but contained a trace of time. Axis hesitated, then moved toward it. A power of time. He thought of a certain figure, Kairos, the villain who appeared in Saint Seiya the Lost Canvas. The younger brother of Kronos, the god of time, Kairos had once been a terror in that mythic world. As Kronos' younger brother, he had once possessed a body and armor that controlled space-time. His essence should have been absolute, at least. Yet before the Big Bang, he had been sealed by his elder brother and flung to the lower realms, doomed to endless reincarnation as a human. In the Lost Canvas tale, Kairos' strength had never matched the legend. Although shrewd and scheming, his combat power had mirrored that of a top Gold Saint. He was sealed by the Gemini Gold Saint and, decades after the Holy War, finally annihilated by Athena's shield, his soul scattering into the cycle of reincarnation. Still, Axis followed the trail. He found a cluster of consciousness, a soul bound in countless shackles. It was exceedingly weak, perhaps on the order of a level 3 god or less, completely sealed. Yet something about this state was odd. Even freed, this being's power would not rival a primordial god, let alone an absolute. Was this truly the brother of a super god, or merely an experiment who had come to believe the myth of kinship? I never expected to find a primordial god here. Why have I never seen you before? The soul asked, addressing Axis. Since his body had been destroyed by Athena's shield 200 years prior, he had drifted in the divine space, hoping for reincarnation, but his brother seemed determined to keep him trapped in the passage in eternal torment. Are you the god of time, Kairos? Axis asked, regarding the unfamiliar deity. Impossible. How do you know who I am? Kairos stared in disbelief. His traces had been erased by his brother. Even his last reincarnation had barely allowed him memories. No god should know him. Yet he seemed to remember the outcome of the past holy war, Athena and 5 bronze saints slaying Hades. But something in his vision clashed. The one who killed Hades was not Athena, but Axis. Axis voiced his doubt bluntly. Are you really the brother of a super god? I don't think, even if your seal were lifted, you'd reach super god level. Not even primordial. Kairos laughed. Too loud, too eager. Unfamiliar god, though I do not know how you learned my name, I am indeed the younger brother of a super god. My strength may not equal his, but was super god. Don't doubt that. He saw an opportunity, a deity outside of time, with no fate tying him down. No wonder he had avoided his brother's notice. I know you wonder why my brother sealed me. He is deranged. As supreme beings, we should have balanced the multiverse together. But he ambushed me, stole almost all my divine power, leaving only a broken core he could not take. The super god stole everything? Axis asked with curiosity. If he could take your power, why didn't he just kill you? Because he couldn't kill me, Kairos replied. We are brothers of equal rank. Though he took 99% of my power, he still lacks his own form. He can only sustain the shape of a great clock. He cannot reach perfection. He wanted my power to become whole. He failed. My remaining fragment is hard to control, but it's all I have left. Axis nodded slowly. A super god seeking perfection by stealing another's power was plausible. The story fit. But Kairos' tone and desperation warned Axis. This god was not entirely trustworthy. You are outside of destiny, Kairos said, leaning closer in whatever form his soul could adopt. Join me, free me, help me reclaim what was stolen, and I can make you an absolute god, second only to me. A proposal made in the shadows of the divine passage, offered by a sealed god who might be a liar or a real danger. Axis considered the words as the faint trickle of Kairos' will curled around the passage like a tentative thread. Chapter 449, Opportunity to Obtain the Power of Time and the Power to Slay Gods. Work together? Help you regain your power, then let you become the supreme while I take second place? Why does everyone love making empty promises? Axis sneered inwardly. The Anti-Monitor had said the same. Axis despised hollow vows. He either wanted something concrete or he spoke only of future possibilities. Helping someone now for the promise of a later reward made no sense. It was like them believing Kainos' words about the future, but not believing that Axis, Qin Shi Huang V50, would become whatever he was destined to be. Besides, Axis could become an absolute god on his own. He didn't need guarantees. Still, Axis had another thought about this god of time. Kill him and seize his time power. In any world, space and time powers were among the mightiest. If space was king, time was revered. He coveted the god of time's power. Until now, he had had no way to take it, but after obtaining Zanza's power from the DC world, he had a method. If he killed a being, he could take their abilities. The catch was, Kainos was only in a soul state. Would killing a god in soul form allow him to absorb the divine power? Also, this god's current power seemed weakened. Barely a level 3 god. A strong golden saint might stand against him. Axis wasn't sure the super god could be killed, but his destruction energy should be capable of destroying this opponent, especially now amplified by the cosmos. Still, you need to fatten a pig before slaughter. Killing Kainos now would yield little time power. Axis needed to know the super god's stance and what trump cards Kainos truly possessed. Trust me, I am a super god. Help me recover my power and I will make you an absolute god, the most powerful among absolute gods, Kainos said, sensing Axis's hesitation. How do I know you aren't lying? What if you give me empty promises? Axis asked. He'd already decided to help, but he wouldn't agree too easily. He had to make Kainos convince him. I assure you, I have no intention of deceiving you. If you help me, our cooperation will bring us both the greatest benefits, Kainos replied urgently. Then tell me your plan. How do you intend to restore your divinity and get revenge on your brother? I know the super god. We can't beat him. He might even be listening to us right now. Axis's voice was sharp. Kainos laughed softly. Of course I have a way. Don't overestimate him. He lacks a true body and can't interfere directly in this world. Some level 1 gods even ignore him. His only avatar is Saturn, and that avatar developed self-awareness and doesn't always obey him. He is the source of things, but he's not a true god of creation. He is neither omniscient nor omnipotent. If the super god truly were omniscient and omnipotent, he would be perfect and have a divine body. Axis nodded. The super god's presence in the Saint Seiya NB tale had been limited. Saturn could be countered by awakening Omega power. Though immortal and indestructible in a sense, there were limits. The signs supported Kainos' claim. Axis found himself inclined to believe this being really was the super god's brother. He listened on. So how do we get to him? How will you defeat the super god and reclaim your power? Axis asked. Do you know about god-slaying power? Kainos asked. What's that? Power to kill gods? Exactly. By nature, gods are immortal within their world. I don't mean weak level 1, 2, or 3 gods. Those are trivial. I mean primal gods, absolute gods, and even my brother, the super god. To kill a god, you need god-slaying power. Without it, you cannot slay a primal god. It's like a rule within the universe. Unless you destroy the entire universe, primal gods are immortal. Absolute gods are theoretically unbeatable. If annihilated, they can be reborn. To really kill a god, you need god-slaying power. Where do you find this god-slaying power? Axis asked, intrigued. It's rare and strange. Kanos' voice dropped. Pegasus Saint Seiya. He's the only one I've ever found who carries god-slaying power. People say Pegasus dared to slay gods, and in a sense that's true. Normally a mortal who challenges a god will die, unless that mortal carries something special. If a mortal kills a god in immortal flesh, that unique power can grow. I was involved in the last holy war because of this. If Pegasus had used his god-slaying power to aid me then, I would have won. The other gods, those petty level 1 main gods, don't even understand what god-slaying power represents. It's the only thing in the world that can threaten or even kill a super god. Axis was stunned. The legendary god-slaying power could appear in a human, and Pegasus Seiya actually possessed it? But had Seiya truly killed a god? He had defeated Hades in that timeline, or at least severely wounded him. I know Pegasus Saint Seiya, Axis said. My ties with Athena are good. I've never sensed any special power in him. That's because I'm a super god, and you're only a primal god. I can see things you can't. Only my brother and I knew of god-slaying power's existence in this world, Kanos said. So how do we obtain it? Have Pegasus help us against the super god? I remember Athena had a god-slaying dagger. Athena's dagger was forged using a trace of Pegasus' power. That's where it came from, Kanos explained. But the dagger alone is limited. To make god-slaying power grow, you must cultivate it. If the Pegasus Saint kills enough gods, the power in him will strengthen. Over time, he could threaten a super god by killing level 1 gods, then primal gods, then absolute gods. It's a very long process. Axis's mind clicked into place. No wonder Pegasus had been so precious during the Holy War. Even the gods hadn't realized his true importance. The Pegasus constellation did indeed carry the seed of god-slaying power. But that process is slow, Axis said. You know about parallel universes. What will happen to this timeline's Athena in the future? There's a single fate for Athena across timelines. She will be killed, Kanos said with grave certainty. Killed by the god of darkness, Apps. You probably haven't heard of Apps. He is the true creator of the universe, a top-tier absolute god. Athena and her saints cannot touch him. Even though they've defeated many gods, this is different. Because of your arrival, this universe's course might change, but my current divine sight cannot see beyond that. That future certainty sold Axis. The supergod's avatar Saturn had been interested in Athena's god-slaying power. Perhaps it threatened him. According to Kanos, only the 2 supergod brothers knew about god-slaying power, though Saturn, as an avatar, did not equal the supergod himself. Fine, I'll help you, Axis said at last. Excellent. First, you must help me restore my body. Then we must cultivate the Pegasus constellation. After Hades' death, Olympus will be restless. We can use that turmoil to temper Pegasus' power. Apollo is nearly a primal god himself. He would be a useful stepping stone. Kanos replied. With a primal god allied, his plan's odds improved. Axis nodded and wrapped Kanos' soul in a surge of divine energy, pulling him out of the god's passage. Originally, Axis had only wanted time power, but the prospect of god-slaying power was too tempting to ignore. There were many Pegasus constellations across realities. Athena's in this world was difficult to touch, but others would not be. They left the god's tunnel and reappeared in the real world. I'm free of that dreadful place. Partner, could you spare some divine power? I need enough to recover and possess a new physical body, Kanos said. No problem. That's what partners are for. Axis smiled. Golden light flashed from his fingertip as he gave Kanos a small portion of his power. The World King God's reserves were still abundant. Kanos drank it in like a sponge, greedily absorbing the gift. Your power is very pure, the purest primal god power. Over countless reincarnations, I extracted only tiny traces, but this is incomparable. I'm already at level 3 god now. A sheen of divine energy wrapped Kanos' soul. Though still limited, he was finally strong enough to try again. You're welcome. Now let's go to Athena's temple, Axis said, and they returned to Athena's sanctuary. A different, magnificent divine might washed over them as they entered. In the center of the temple, the huge golden cocoon had vanished. In its place hovered a goddess suffused with golden radiance, Athena, now a primal god. She radiated life and power. Her presence had leapt beyond Apollo to stand on par with Zeus. Axis, her voice was both ethereal and regal, threaded with disbelief. "You're back. The matter of the underworld, is it done? Hades is dead?" She swept her gaze over Axis and sensed the new presence, an integration of death divine power that belonged to Hades. The centuries-long enemy had fallen. She wondered what Olympus would think, but it didn't matter. As a primal god, with Axis by her side, Olympus dared not act rashly. "It seems Hades has become part of your power. But who is this?" Athena's eyes sharpened to a blade as she stared at Kanos' soul. Her expression shifted. She recognized him from the last holy war. "Heh, long time no see, Athena. You're different from the other Athenas. How fortunate you've reached the primal god level," Kanos said. "Axis, don't be fooled. Why did you bring him out?" Athena snapped. "Let me introduce," Axis said. "He calls himself Kanos, god of time, says he's the brother of the super-god Kronos. I found him in the god's passage. He claims his brother betrayed and sealed him for countless years. He wants to ally with me and promise to help me become the strongest absolute god." "Don't trust him, Axis. Do you know what a super-god is? He's a thief, not a true god of time. A super-god doesn't have brothers." Athena shook her head. In her and the underworld king's eyes, he had merely stolen a shard of time power, not a true time god. "No," Axis said firmly. "I confirmed he's the super-god's brother. At first I thought he was lying too, but I used methods to verify his story. What he said is true." Chapter 450. Seize Omega, Project Divine Power, and Retrieve the Emperor. Axis had been testing Kairos for some time, so he already had a clear picture of the situation. Any slip-up from Kairos in their recent conversation would have been noticed. "Don't say that, Lady Athena. You wield the most powerful weapon in this world. You just haven't realized it yet," Kairos intoned. Inwardly, he seethed. Why was the power of god-slaying tied to such a young woman? Did she even understand the magnitude of what she possessed? "I wield the most powerful weapon? What are you talking about?" Athena asked, frowning as she looked at Kairos. Was he referring to her divine cloth, the staff of Nike, the Aegis, or something else? "Of course. It's your Pegasus constellation. You didn't think it was the staff of Nike or the Aegis, did you? Or that dagger of yours that can kill gods?" Kairos' voice cut through. To him, Athena's physical artifacts were no more than level 1 god trinkets. Even absolute god artifacts barely registered. "Stop being so mysterious, Kairos. Let me explain it to Athena," Axis said, choosing to be blunt. He laid out everything. The Pegasus constellation harbored the power of god-slaying, and he described that power in detail. Athena was stunned. How is this possible? The Pegasus constellation holds that kind of power? You can't be joking. Kairos, how could Pegasus be so formidable? Axis watched her reaction calmly. "It's true, Athena, but Pegasus has only just begun to tap that power. He needs to slaughter more gods, sacrifice all the Olympian gods, and then kill at least 2 or more absolute gods. Only then will his god-slaying power be able to threaten super-gods. The power grows with each god it kills. It can't be cultivated or earned by other means. The god-slaying dagger you made is essentially a crystallization of a fragment of Pegasus' power. If we cooperate, I can guarantee you'll reach absolute god status." Athena weighed the offer. Becoming a primordial god with Axis' help was already a stroke of luck. Reaching absolute god was a prospect she had never dared imagine. Yet the plan raised questions. If the power lay in Pegasus, why shouldn't she cultivate it herself? What role did Kairos really play? It seemed like Axis and Kairos were doing all the work. Did Axis have his own agenda? Her eyes flicked to Axis, and the goddess of wisdom's mind began to race. Something nagged at her. Axis now bore a powerful Hades-like presence, a power he had not possessed before he left. Logically, Hades' death should have collapsed the underworld in Elysium, but instead the underworld had not only endured, it had grown more stable. Elysium still existed. Axis must have somehow taken Hades' strong domains, seized his power. Athena instantly suspected Axis had a way to take others' divine power. That was why he would help Kairos now, to strengthen himself before he could eliminate the god of time and claim his power, just as he had done to Hades. "I understand, Kairos," Athena said, meeting Kairos' eyes. "I am Axis' wife now, so I will respect my husband's choice. If he chooses to help you, I have nothing more to say." Kairos laughed. "A wise choice, Athena. We will succeed. First, I need a suitable physical body. His divine perception swept the sanctuary and locked onto a single figure. The physical form he found was astonishing, more powerful than any god's physical body Kairos had encountered. Even Axis's own god body was slightly inferior. Kairos surged to possess the body, but Axis stopped him with a wave of Cosmo. Superboy had submitted to Axis's strength and was recovering his power under Axis's protection. Axis intended to cultivate him, not hand him over to Kairos. Why are you stopping me, ally? This body is perfect. With it, I can manifest level 1 god power and aid you in battle, Kairos protested. That's not happening. He's my subordinate. I can't give you his life, Axis said firmly. Don't be stingy. I can use this body more effectively. If you seize this body, my subordinate will die. I'll clone a body for you. You only need to wait a little while, Axis cut in. Axis had studied the multiverse. The main universe's Superman clone, Bizarro, was a twisted counterpart, heat vision to cold rays, gale breath to vacuum inhalation. Axis had visited Dr. Garrow's lab in a parallel, movie-version Dragon Ball universe and acquired its technologies without altering his own timeline. He had taken android blueprints, the methods for infinite energy androids, modified mechanical designs, and most importantly, cloning equipment capable of producing cell. Using that intelligent cloning computer, creating a clone suitable for a Kryptonian body was feasible. A clone? That concept exists, but are you sure it will work? Kairos asked. Of course, Axis replied. Be patient. When the clone is ready, I'll place your soul inside it and let it grow alongside your Cosmo. It will be a body tailored to you. Kairos relaxed. Then I'll wait. For now, I need to strengthen my divine power. Having received a little primordial divine power from Axis, Kairos retreated to a hidden corner in Athena's temple to absorb and transform it into time divine power. Axis and Athena exchanged a look and set a divine barrier around the temple to keep their conversation private. You already suspected something, Axis said to Athena. Of course, I'm the goddess of wisdom, Athena replied. You're planning to seize this time god's power, aren't you? Axis nodded. Smart. No wonder you bested Hades and Poseidon so many times. Yes, I plan to use him to get to primordial god level, then eliminate him and take his power. You are formidable, Athena said. Do you also want Pegasus' god-slaying power? Axis pulled her into his arms and smiled. Pegasus is your protector. I wouldn't take something from my wife. That's not my style. Athena smiled back. I knew you were proud the moment I met you, but if you want Pegasus' god-slaying power, this Pegasus won't do. If it's a Pegasus from another world, that changes things. You mean you want me to find a Pegasus from another universe? Exactly. Athena explained that now she had reached primordial god level, she could sense her other selves across the multiverse. Most of her counterparts remained level 1 gods, but one of them had 1 foot in the primordial god realm, an existence far stronger than the rest. When a god neared absolute god status, they needed to control all their other selves across universes. Otherwise, the other selves were merely sacrifices. Athena did not want to remain a clone. She wanted to be the true main body. She told Axis about the Athena who already teetered at primordial god level in the Omega world, that Athena's Pegasus had surpassed every gold saint and was currently serving as the Sagittarius gold saint. If they killed that Pegasus, they could take its god-slaying power. It was a plan that would both eliminate Athena's strongest rival and secure Axis the power he desired. That's a good plan, I agree, Axis said after a moment's thought. The Athena who had 1 foot in the primordial god realm sounded like the Athena of the Omega world. Time there had progressed differently. While Axis and Athena had just finished the Hades Holy War, the Omega world had already advanced. That world even had 2 Pegasuses, Koga, the protagonist who awakened Omega power and could force a super god to a standstill, and Seiya, who had become Sagittarius. Confronting them would be challenging. That world's gold saints could erupt into level 2 or even level 3 god levels with their 7th sense, and there was also the super god Saturn to consider. We have the ability to travel to other universes, Athena said with a smile. This is our opportunity to go on the offensive. We'll act as invaders. Fate had aligned. If Athena hadn't met Axis, if Axis hadn't helped her break through to primordial god level, she wouldn't have been able to perceive her other selves. Axis's multiversal mobility made a proactive strike possible. We must plan carefully. First, I must retrieve my companion, and I intend to elevate Ultraman into a god, Axis said. The Emperor had also been transported to this world. It was time to find him. Ultraman's power could be decisive. If Axis could elevate him to at least level 2 god, his combat strength would rival a primordial god. He was a powerful fighting force, and once properly focused, Axis could manipulate and control this proud, villainous Superman-like warrior. You say your friend is here. What kind of being is he? Athena asked. He has creative power similar to mine, Axis replied. When he uses it, he shines with a golden light, and his energy feels sacred. Like me, he hasn't fully awakened God's cosmos. Axis had arrived in this world only 2 days earlier. On the night he landed, the Battle of the 12 Zodiac Palaces erupted. Between that night and the following day, he had awakened his God's cosmos and defeated Hades. Now he sat and expanded his perception through his cosmo, tracing his companion's presence. If he's here, he should be easy to find. Want my help? Athena offered. No need. I can pinpoint him anytime. Axis closed his eyes and let his God's cosmos burn, pouring in divine power until his perception stretched infinitely. In a short while, he located the Emperor precisely. The Emperor's condition was dire. Like Axis, he had been displaced and then subjected to the world's strange influence on divine power. His inner divinity had become violent. Because the Emperor had endured the trial of the Golden Throne, he had enough discipline to suppress it for now, but he was hiding in a cave trying to control the surge. He was likely waiting for rescue. Axis wasted no time and teleported to the cave. Axis, you finally came, you brat! The Emperor barked in relief and irritation. What happened? You threw me into another world, then I was pulled here by some unknown force, and now my divine power's gone wild. Despite his annoyance, the Emperor was glad to see him. It's complicated, but I'll help you awaken your God's cosmos, Axis replied calmly. With your strength, you should be able to awaken to at least the early primordial god level. Chapter 451, Emperor Awakening, God's Microcosm, God of Light, Sun God. Emperor Axis brought the human emperor straight into Athena's temple. Athena, sensing a majestic aura that was vast yet unlike any divine power she knew, stared at him in surprise. His situation mirrored Axis's first meeting with her. He wielded terrifying divine energy but had not awakened his own divine cosmos. Worse, he was far less able to restrain that power. He was almost completely sealed. If Axis hadn't found him, this unfamiliar world king god might have self-destructed or permanently sealed himself away. This is human emperor Neos, my father-in-law from my first marriage. He is a deity who commands holiness and creation, and once guarded the entire human race in our universe, Axis said, briefly introducing him to Athena. The introduction felt awkward. Axis had originally presented only Kasha, but after his travels between worlds, he had somehow become involved with Athena as well. Athena, this is Emperor Neos, Axis continued, turning to the human emperor. Athena is the goddess of wisdom and war in this realm. She helped me when I first came here. Back then, we had a kind of spiritual communion. Our souls resonated. Our bond is effectively like marriage. The human emperor's gaze swept over Athena, and he inclined his head slightly in acknowledgement. He had lived nearly 100,000 years. He understood such complexities and was not surprised that Axis had found another companion. Axis was devoted and good to Kasha. The emperor had no concern that Axis would abandon her. It's a pleasure to meet you, Emperor Neos. I am Athena, a goddess who protects this world, Athena said with a graceful bow. For reasons I hardly understand, I came together with Axis. Hello, Lady Athena. Young people can handle their own affairs. I only hope that you and my daughter Kasha will get along, the emperor replied politely. He felt the divine power emanating from Athena, full of light and compassion. In this universe, she might well be counted among the human gods. He had even once encountered an Athena in their old warp, later devoured by the chaos evil gods. He had not expected to meet a goddess of that name in a parallel world. Axis, there was a sudden explosion of divine power in this world. What is going on? Your aura seems even stronger. Have you found a solution? The human emperor asked, turning to Axis. That's right, father-in-law. The power in this world is called cosmos, divided into divine cosmos and ordinary human cosmos. Forming a cosmos requires a controlled divine power eruption. If it's mishandled, The power can tear the vessel apart, so special methods are needed to awaken it, Axis explained. So that's how it works. Then begin. Let me witness this cosmic power from within oneself, the Emperor said, curiosity plain in his voice. According to Axis, a divine cosmos could amplify a deity's power tremendously, attack, defense, creativity, if formed correctly. No problem, father-in-law. It may hurt. You must restrain yourself and only erupt at the decisive moment, Axis replied, nodding toward Athena. Just as you helped me before, assist me now. I'll help the Emperor awaken his cosmos. The way Axis and Athena had awakened their cosmos together before was not suitable here. Their previous method had been built on a much greater imbalance of power. This time, Axis decided to use his own origin cosmos and Athena's primordial cosmos as supports to guide the human Emperor's awakening. Athena would not fuse her cosmos with Axis's as she had once done. Axis was now stronger than the Emperor, and with Athena's assistance, it would be easier. Axis first guided the Emperor's suppressed holy world king god power, and Athena supported from the side. Athena condensed her primordial cosmos at once. Golden radiance spread like a warm tide, not fusing with Axis but forming a stable, encompassing auxiliary field that enveloped both Axis and the Emperor. Axis pressed his palm lightly to the Emperor's forehead. His origin cosmos, containing the cycles of birth and death, destruction and creation, flowed out slowly, cautiously touching the holy world king god power that had been forcibly suppressed and was on the verge of erupting. The process was careful and restrained. The essence of the Emperor's power was utterly different from Axis's and from this universe's native force. It was great world king god power, born of human faith and creativity, vast, pure, and exclusive. Follow my guidance, father-in-law, Axis's divine sense transmitted. Use your will to construct your own cosmos furnace. The human Emperor's will was tenacious. He understood the principles of the cosmos almost instantly. His mental strength governed the surging divine power, beginning to build the foundation of his cosmos. In sheer will, he outmatched Axis. He had once sat upon the golden throne for the entire human race and endured unending torment. The form his divine cosmos took, however, exceeded every expectation. It was not a furnace or a star. It was not Axis's singularity, nor Athena's weave of wisdom and war. In the depths of the Emperor's will, a gigantic psionic matrix rose, fiery, magnificent, utterly rational, composed of countless geometric golden runes. It resembled a supersized sacred reactor. At its core burned the pure fire of human will, tempered by trillions of human beliefs and uplifted by world king god power. It was the power of hope, the concentrated will of all humanity. Even outside the Warhammer universe, the Emperor retained this human hope as a force. How incredible! Your father-in-law holds such a terrifying power of hope. It makes his cosmos uniquely human, closer to Earth, Athena said, surprised. Don't be distracted, Athena. Use our primordial powers and divine cosmos to help him awaken, Axis ordered. The moment the matrix-like divine cosmos furnace took shape, the Emperor's previously chaotic divine power found absolute order and began to compress toward it. Now ignite it, father-in-law, Axis whispered. With Athena's auxiliary cosmos, they injected a pure guiding energy into the matrix's core. Boom! Inside the Emperor, a scorching sun flared to life. A pure golden cosmos erupted, a blinding, orderly radiance filled with majesty and holiness. It was not warm as a hearth. It carried a blazing sanctity. Within that light, countless human phantoms seemed to pray, to fight without fear, to carry civilization forward. All of it coalesced into a glorious pillar of light that pierced the void, the collective will of humanity incarnate. This newborn minor cosmos was terrifying from its first breath. Its oppressive aura rivaled Athena's primordial presence, though its nature was different, scorching, rational, and overwhelmingly radiant, suffused with an absolute will. Man can conquer nature. Before the Dark King's annihilation, the Emperor's light had been brilliant but cold, threaded with darkness. After Axis destroyed the Dark King, and with the World King God power and the Holy Light power seeded by Sanguinius, the Emperor's divine power mutated. It had become scorching and profoundly sacred, no longer a cold sun but a star that warmed the heart. The entire Athena temple trembled as the sanctuary's barrier hummed, not under attack now, but responding to the birth of a powerful new existence. The 12 gold cloths resonated, a joyous harmony, The 12 gold saints found themselves bathed in a sun's radiance, turning even more resplendent. The Emperor's power was a pure stellar core. Even the zodiacal center of their world seemed to resonate. How amazing, Axis! Your father-in-law's potential far exceeds my imagination, Athena said. My father-in-law has carried too much, Axis replied. In our world, he was the last hope of humanity. Alone, he bore an entire civilization, the humanity of a whole galaxy. That explains the sacred warmth in his power, Athena mused. She felt in him a solar divinity greater than even her brothers Apollo and Abel, more benevolent, more majestic. So he's effectively a god of light, a sun god? Axis asked. You could say that. His power is that of a sun god, perhaps even stronger than my two brothers. You must know there isn't only one sun god in this universe. There are many stars and therefore many sun gods. For example, on our Earth there are two, Apollo, who rules Mount Olympus, and another named Abel, Athena explained. Abel? He was defeated by you, wasn't he? Axis asked. Abel had been a character known from a story, is strong in setting but poorly displayed. You know of him? Yes, I defeated Abel. His raw strength outstripped Apollo's, but Apollo had cultivated his divine body and his minor cosmos steadily for years. Abel was killed and later defeated by me again after he awakened centuries later, Athena sighed. It was an old grievance. Why did every awakened god seem to contend for the Emperor? The Emperor opened his eyes slowly. Where once the gaze contained an endless psychic storm, now two cold golden stars burned, each with miniature orderly golden galaxies orbiting within. He raised a hand. Pure golden light, etched with sacred runes, burned in his palm. It felt like a force that could establish rules and banish chaos. He probed his new power system. The minor cosmos integrated his world king god power, psychic energy, and human faith, more efficient and more directly subservient to his will. The minor cosmos could accept his world king god power, his holy light, or a synthesis, creating even greater effects. Wonderful, the Emperor said, admiration in his voice. This power lets my will extend more fully. It is distinct from the world king god. He looked to Axis and nodded. Thank you, Axis. This minor cosmos of a god will burn in a more perfect form. Axis smiled and withdrew his hand. It seems you have mastered it. Welcome to the universe's system of power, father-in-law. I seem to have taken on the attribute of a sun god, the Emperor murmured, looking to the distant sky. There is a sun god in this universe slightly weaker than me, and he senses my emergence. That would be Apollo. Abel is already dead, Athena said, stepping to Axis's side. It was time to settle matters on Mount Olympus. With three primordial gods now standing with them, the Olympians were in a bad position. I sense another sun god, but he has suffered greatly. He may be in eternal slumber. I could awaken him, the Emperor added. Athena and Axis exchanged glances. The other sun god, almost eternally asleep, must be Abel. At that moment, the sky seemed to tear open. A golden chariot surged out of the sun and thundered above the sanctuary. An immense divine power descended on the holy city, filled with the sun's fury, blunt and offended. Athena, I can't believe you let Abel live. He's a sinner. There can be only one sun god in this world, and that one is me, roared the figure on the chariot. He was tall, nearly 2 meters, hair like molten gold, draped in magnificent golden raiment. His whole presence burned with solar aura. It was Apollo. Though in ancient myth, Helios was the sun, here Apollo claimed the light, and he had sensed a sun god whose power was purer and more sacred than his own. He was the leader of the Olympians, already halfway to a primordial god. Most level 1 gods bowed below him. But now a solar power stronger than his had emerged. Someone had stepped into the primordial realm before him. That could not be tolerated. My brother, you are mistaken. Abel has fallen into an eternal sleep. This new sun god is not him, Athena said, joining Axis and the Emperor as they stepped out of the goddess's palace to face Apollo. Strange deity, do you dare to usurp my authority? Apollo demanded, glaring at the Emperor. The sun has never belonged to anyone. Axis snapped. I won't have you talking down to us. Get down here. Chapter 450. Step on the sun god, kneel and speak to me, and be canonized as a god. Axis's voice was quiet, but it carried a primeval divine weight, an invisible, colossal hand pressing down on the sun chariot high above. Apollo's expression shifted. The chariot beneath him flared with billions of golden rays, trying to push back against that pressure, to resist the overwhelming cosmic force. But the origin, cosmos within Axis wielded the raw power of cosmic creation and unmaking, a power far beyond a mere half-step primal god. Boom, who gave you the right to be arrogant? Axis said without ceremony, and with that, he unleashed primal god-level pressure. The golden chariot shuddered, the celestial horses screamed, and the carriage plummeted, crashing onto the sanctuary plaza in a storm of dust. Apollo staggered out, disheveled, shock and fury contorting his handsome features as he stared at Axis, then at the Emperor, whose golden cosmos pulsed with life, and finally at Athena. Athena, how dare you collude with a foreign god and attack Olympus's sun god? Allow someone to steal the authority of the sun? Do you want a new god war? Do you want Mount Olympus to rise against us? Apollo demanded, trying to enforce his rank as king of the gods. Yet he could feel it. Both Axis and the Emperor radiated a cosmos far greater than his. Even Athena, who had always stood in his shadow, had reached primal god level. The thought was intolerable. A misunderstanding, brother, Athena said, stepping forward. Her primal god aura spread, steadying the scene and neutralizing Apollo's pressure. This is His Majesty Emperor Neos, from another universe. He's a god of light and creation who protects humanity. He only just awakened his cosmos, and its nature resembles the sun. He is not stealing your power. How many suns are there in the universe? The sun's authority isn't yours alone. So who is that other one? Aren't you going to introduce him? Apollo snapped. Athena glanced at Axis with a faint intimacy in her voice. This is Axis, my partner. He's a primal god, among the strongest of them, and he's already brushed against absolute levels. Those words landed like a thunderclap. A primal god, two primal gods, and one who had nearly reached absolute? Apollo's pupils constricted. The realization struck cold. Athena had not merely found outside help. She stood with two supreme beings capable of toppling Olympus's established order. Not even all Olympus combined could match one of them, let alone three. The only hope would be if Zeus returned or Abel regained full strength. Otherwise, Olympus had no chance. The Emperor's gaze swept Apollo. The sun is the endless source of light and warmth in the universe, the foundation of life, not the private domain of any single deity. Your claim is narrow. Axis and I do not seek to be your enemies. Your words, however, were insolent. Apollo's arrogance was likely born of everything always going his way. But facing gods far above him, he had no right to posture. Only humility would save him. I'm happy my sister is marrying, but Athena, you're a chief of Olympus. Why didn't you discuss this with me? If this foreign god marries my sister, he'll be a god of Olympus and must obey the king of gods. As a distinguished primal god, you may hold the title, but you must submit to the king's leadership. Your brother doesn't understand how to assess situations, Axis said coolly, looking at Athena. He's used to being Olympus's leader. He'll need time to accept this. Athena had thought it obvious. Axis and the Emperor were not gods of this universe and would one day leave. They could not truly affect Olympus's rule. That Apollo presumed to make a primal god obey him was laughable. You? What did you say? Apollo stammered. Kneel and speak, Axis said, cold as iron, and poured a terrifying god of destruction force into his cosmos. A purple aura spread across his body. Apollo's divinity unraveled. He was cut down, wounded and bleeding, forced to his knees. Yes, stay kneeling. This is respect for a primal god, respect for the strong. Remember, if I wished, I could destroy you and Mount Olympus with ease. I didn't because my current wife is one of you, or used to be. Axis stepped his boot onto Apollo's head. Apollo's eyes were wild. He tried to rise, to struggle, but an invisible power pinned him. All his pride, everything he'd relied on, evaporated before this primal god. He had no choice. I understand, Apollo choked out, humiliated, but forced into submission. He vowed privately that one day, when he too became a primal god, he would repay this twice over. Axis nodded and lifted his foot. Apollo struggled up, swallowed his pride, and turned to Athena with a complicated look. Athena, I will report today to the other Olympians. If you hold a wedding, inform us. Olympus will host a grand ceremony. I will take my leave. He recalled the battered sun chariot and left in a golden flash, needing time to reassess Olympus's position. Athena sighed in relief. She had no wish for an all-out war. Axis's display had been decisive. He could have crushed Apollo if he'd wanted to. So, Axis, the Emperor asked, turning to him. What are your plans? Return to our world or stay a while? Stay for a while, Axis said, looking at the Emperor. I have important matters. First, to obtain the power of time, and second, to seek the god-slaying force, the Omega power. You may stay in the sanctuary. I understand. I, too, want to observe this universe, the Emperor replied. Their last travels had been dangerous. They'd been thrown between collapsing universes. This time, they sought to learn and prepare. They returned to the goddess's palace. The Emperor would not interfere with the other deity who resided there. Axis had business to attend. He summoned Grail and Ultraman. Ultraman, Axis said first, I gave you a spirit tree fruit before to recover your energy and a layer of key protection. Now I want to offer you something more. You have already given me what I always dreamed of, Lord Axis, Ultraman replied, bowing. Pride would never have allowed him to bend, but Axis's power was irresistible. I'm fair, Axis said. If one day you surpass me, you can challenge me. If you beat me, I won't fault you for following your own strength. You're joking, Ultraman said, but Axis wasn't. I'm not joking. I can grant godhood to ordinary beings. You have the qualifications. Step forward. Ultraman's face went pale. To become a god meant immortality and power, everything he desired. He had ruled a planet and led the crime syndicate, but he was still mortal. He swallowed and approached Axis's throne, kneeling on one knee. Axis placed his palm on Ultraman's forehead and unleashed the World King God's authority. A torrent of divine power flowed into him, elevating his soul. Axis poured enough force into Ultraman that it could have made 10 ordinary beings into planet-level divinities. The pure creative power, laced with a trace of Axis's origin, poured through Ultraman like a warm flood. Ultraman growled, not from pain, but from the primal upheaval of his being. Every cell greedily absorbed the divinity. His Kryptonian body, already legendary, underwent a profound transformation. His mortal soul was unbound and reborn under the World King's authority, given a divine radiance and immortal essence. Seconds felt like centuries. When Axis withdrew his hand, Ultraman remained kneeling, but the aura around him had changed utterly. A potent, majestic cosmos burned within him. He had become the god of power, a planet god in status, though built on a Kryptonian foundation. Axis's divine infusion made him more capable than a typical level 2 god. He could stand against level 1 gods such as Hades or Poseidon and likely have the upper hand in combat. Ultraman rose, fists clenched, the universe seeming to answer to him. His voice trembled with exultation and worship. This, the power of a god. I feel like I could crush stars. The yellow sun won't weaken me anymore. That's right, Axis said. You're evolved. The power of stars, red, yellow, or blue, can no longer harm you. This is only the beginning. You're a planet god for now. How far you go depends on yourself. Yes, Lord Axis, I'll never forget your grace. Ultraman knelt again, devotion absolute. Eternal life and the removal of weakness had bought his loyalty. Axis nodded and turned his attention to Grail. She was more complicated, one to cultivate carefully. I can grant you godhood too, he said. I can help you fuse the Omega Force with this universe's cosmic system. Would you accept true control of that power? Before Grail could answer, Ultraman cut in without hesitation. Lord Axis, grant this woman to me. Let her bear me a powerful offspring. Chapter 453, Omega Goddess vs. God of Strength. After all, she was Darkseid's daughter. As Ultraman, the Superman of Earth 3, he knew better than most how formidable Darkseid was and how potent his bloodline could be. A woman like this would surely bear him powerful, elite offspring. He had once had his eye on the Amazon princess, but his preference had changed. How could that Amazon compare to the woman standing before him? This woman not only carried Darkseid's blood, but was also an Amazon god-chosen assassin. She combined the best of both lines. The gods of this world were admirable, but Ultraman believed women from his own kind were more suitable. He wanted her to bear him descendants of the power race. Axis raised an eyebrow. Ultraman was something else, having taken a liking to Grail. But in looks, Grail was worlds away from Superwoman. At least Superwoman was a normal human beauty. Grail had red eyes, grayish-white, almost black skin, half her head shaved. She was no conventional beauty. Her figure, however, was impressive. Brother, Axis thought, you have eclectic tastes. Before he could speak, Grail beside him suddenly erupted. Her face twisted with fury, and she glared at Ultraman. What did you say? You barbaric Kryptonian beast. You're deluding yourself. Her icy expression snapped into rage, and crimson Omega energy burst from her eyes, forming a violent vortex of power. He was too presumptuous. She had lived for thousands of years. No one had ever spoken to her like that. She was Darkseid's daughter, not some helpless girl, an immortal assassin, the same age as Wonder Woman, 5,000 years old. Grail, daughter of the great Darkseid, Amazon-chosen assassin, being treated like a broodmare by a barbarian who had only just become a god by others' grace? It was intolerable. You're asking for death. Ultraman snarled. The divine power he had just received, fused with his Kryptonian physique, had inflated his confidence to a dangerous level. He didn't wait for Axis's command. His fist, wrapped in golden divine light and brute Kryptonian force, carried the momentum to crush stars as it smashed toward Grail. On Earth 3, in the eyes of the power race, women were meant to be subdued. Axis, however, didn't intervene. He crossed his legs and watched with interest, setting a small cosmos barrier around them to protect the surroundings. Omega Sanction, Grail shrieked. The crimson beams that erupted were no ordinary heat vision. Infused with her fury and killing intent, they became deep red rays that distorted space and annihilated everything in their path, meeting Ultraman's fist head-on. Boom! The collision shook the entire goddess palace. If not for Athena's and Axis's divine power unconsciously stabilizing the structure, the strike alone would have sent the palace flying. Ultraman's fist bulldozed most of the Omega beam, but Omega Energy's unique existence erasure trait cut through his divine defenses, instantly carbonizing and shredding the skin and muscle of his knuckles, exposing the golden, shimmering bones beneath. Ugh! Ultraman groaned, shocked and enraged. He had not expected her counterattack to be capable of wounding his nascent divine form. His pride burned hotter. The grace of Lord Axis had made his power terrifying, he thought. This woman's hit could only slow him, not stop him. Damn woman, he roared. His eyes flashed crimson as he unleashed heat vision, but this time it was fused with his god power. Golden red heat lanced out, far more intense than anything he had used before. Grail refused to be outdone. More Omega energy surged from her and condensed into a constantly rotating, light-devouring deep red prism shield in front of her. The two forces met again. The sanctuary trembled under the shockwaves. Grail eyed Ultraman grimly. No one wanted to fight a physical monster like a Kryptonian up close, and the Omega beam she had just fired had only wounded him slightly. Unacceptable. Her attack would have killed Superwoman outright. Even the Wonder Woman of the main universe would hesitate before facing her Omega beam. Yet here, against Ultraman, it had only nicked him. They erupted into a brutal exchange. Axis watched, amused, wanting to see which would prevail. Before Ultraman's ascension, he had been slightly weaker than Grail because of her Omega power, but after gaining the god's cosmos, he had the edge. Grail snorted, drew her scythe axe, and charged. Ultraman responded with a massive swing, his fists carrying the newly comprehended god's cosmos. Roar! Witness the power of a god, Ultraman bellowed, fury pushing him forward. He ignored the corrosive sting on his hand, his body erupting in golden light as he became a human-shaped star, colliding with Grail in pure speed and force. Damn barbarian, Grail cried, knowing she could not trade blows with a Kryptonian. She thrust both palms forward and unleashed dozens of twisting, leaping deep red energy whips. They were not straight strikes, but snares that wrapped and lashed at Ultraman from unpredictable angles, each lash carrying the Omega erasure to sap and obstruct his charge. Ultraman sneered and met them head-on, neither dodging nor parrying. His fists, clothed in divine power and a crackling bioelectric aura, hammered like pile drivers. Bang! 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 Golden fist shadows smashed through crimson whips, annulling them. Ultraman's strength dominated. Each blow could vaporize several whips at once. The stray Omega energy scorched his golden body, leaving sizzling marks, but could not penetrate deeper. His healing and divinity were too rapid. Is that all you've got, daughter of Darkseid? Ultraman taunted as he closed the distance, his colossal hand aiming for her head. With the god's cosmos, his speed had reached unimaginable levels. He could surpass light speed now without effort. Grail's figure blurred as she retreated like a ghost, and at the same time she formed an intricate hand seal. Omega power burst. Buzz. An unstable, deep red singularity. like a miniature collapsing black hole, blossomed before Ultraman. Space within it folded and matter dissolved as it generated a terrifying suction that tried to drag his body and even his existence into nothingness. Ultraman's momentum stalled. He felt his body and soul pulled toward oblivion. He planted his feet and burned divine energy around himself, fighting the tug. "Petty tricks," Ultraman snarled. His arm muscles bulged, shining with a dazzling crimson divine glow, and with a superhuman wrench of strength, he tore the singularity apart. Rip! The deep red vortex was ripped to shreds by his raw might fused with the cosmos. Chaotic energy slapped him back half a step. Fine cracks marred his divine form but closed rapidly under his godly recovery. "Now it's my turn." Ultraman inhaled deeply. His eyes flared crimson as he gathered energy far beyond his previous limit. Before he had only been able to unleash raw heat, now, baptized in the god's cosmos, his heat vision became a cataclysm. A golden red torrent, a spear of light like the dawn of the universe, blazed outward, divine power and Kryptonian force intertwined, a beam wider and more intense than anything he'd ever used. It twisted the very space inside the barrier as it swept toward Grail. Grail's pupils contracted. She could feel the terror of the oncoming strike. She could not take it head on. She poured every ounce of her Omega power into her form and tried to spatially jump away. But Ultraman's battle instincts were uncanny. The beam cut across all escape paths. Seeing herself about to be struck, Grail's eyes flashed. She gave up a total dodge and instead concentrated nearly all her Omega energy into a single dense shield. Boom! The spear of light crashed into Grail's deep red barrier. The impact triggered a blinding inferno inside the shield. The air melted, light turned to flame. Cracks spidered across Grail's energy wall. Pfft! Grail spat blood. Her Omega power was strange and deadly, but in raw energy and scale, it still seemed inferior to Ultraman's fusion of divine power, Kryptonian physiology, and the god's cosmos. The barrier was about to shatter. Ultraman's face split in a victorious snarl. "Enough!" Axis's cold voice cut through the chaos with absolute authority. He didn't rise, he only raised a hand. An invisible force, vast beyond comprehension, descended like the universe's own shackles. It suppressed the roiling energies around both combatants and forced them back into their bodies, pinning them immobile. Neither could move a finger. The pressure made Ultraman, flush with newly won godhood, break into a cold sweat. The Omega light in Grail's eyes was forcibly snuffed. She stared in shock. "You wretch," Grail spat, clutching her shoulder and burning with fury. "You're not even. If you had fought me before, you would never have won. You only beat me by relying on your divine power and the god's cosmos." Ultraman bowed his head slightly at Axis's glare. "Lord Axis, I'm sorry. I wanted a woman to bear my offspring. Perhaps too much." Axis regarded Grail. "Grail is indignant, and I understand. Ultraman defeated you through the god's cosmos, but will you swear fealty to me? If you do, I can grant you the god's cosmos as well." Grail didn't hesitate. The fight had shown her that without the cosmos, she was vulnerable. She stepped forward, adopting an almost reverent posture. "Of course I will, Lord Axis." "I have watched your power," Axis said. "Your Omega effect is formidable, but it depends too heavily on your father's bloodline and the rules of that universe. I can elevate you to godhood, help you integrate that Omega power with this universe's cosmos system. Then you will control the power, not be controlled by it. Will you accept?" Grail dropped to one knee, head bowed. "I will. Grail pledges absolute loyalty to you, Lord Axis." Her desire for power was purer and fiercer than Ultraman's. She would do anything to be stronger, to surpass her father and punish the man who had humiliated her. "Very well," Axis nodded and placed his hand on Grail's forehead. The divine power he infused this time was different. He carefully guided the energy and split off a wisp of his own divine consciousness to begin parsing and reshaping the dark side-born Omega power inside her. The process was more complex than Ultraman's transformation. Omega energy was highly destructive and aggressive, but in the presence of Axis, a half-step absolute god, it was forced into order and gradually folded into Grail's nascent god's cosmos and the World King god's divine template. Grail had been a demigod already, with an Omega divinity inherited from Darkseid. Now, Axis's aid elevated her to planetary-level godhood, wings on a tiger. The god's cosmos she awakened transformed her into an Omega goddess. Axis watched with curiosity as the energies merged. He wondered what truly separated the Omega divine power of the DC Pantheon from the Omega cosmos of this world. Axis would know the answer soon enough. Omega Force was the pinnacle of power in the DC universe, unequivocally multiversal in scope. The Omega Cosmo in the Saint Seiya world was also multiversal level. Against a super god incarnation like Saturn, it fought on equal footing, though it lacked the divine immortality attribute. Axis's strongest current power was still the God of Destruction's force, and it would be difficult for him to raise that to true multiverse level. Gaining Xantia's abilities in the DC universe had been his greatest windfall. He had once considered killing Grell outright and taking her Omega Force by force, but he had rejected the idea. As a Scion, he couldn't shamelessly prey on a woman, even one who was a fierce goddess, and the Omega Force in the DC universe had dangerous side effects. Even Darkseid could use it to possess others. Those two reasons were enough to make Axis abandon the shortcut. In another universe, however, such scruples might not apply. Axis's gaze turned to Ultraman. "I know you're looking for a powerful goddess, but you can't subdue Grell. Let's handle it when you find a more suitable one," he said. He remembered there was a goddess of love in the Omega world. If he could have subdued her, he might have paired her with Ultraman. Ultraman didn't object, but Grell was eager to try. She had finally comprehended the god's Cosmo and wanted to challenge Ultraman to avenge her earlier defeat. Over the next few days, Axis used the power of the Underworld King to revive the Underworld King's army. He needed cannon fodder, and specters were a perfect choice. Loyalty to Hades? Most specters had never seen Hades anyway. With the god of death, the god of sleep, and the goddess of vengeance vouching for him, nobody was likely to object. Using black jewels of the underworld, orichalcum, and stardust, Axis mass-produced celestial and terrestrial specter surpluses. These armors met gold-cloth standards in hardness and effectiveness. He also gave materials to Ultraman and Grell and had them forge their own armors. The Emperor did the same, combining the world's special materials with his divine blood to fashion his own god cloth. Beyond Cosmo, the cloths of this world were formidable weapons, far more useful than space marine armor, and they could be inherited by future generations. To be honest, this Cosmo power is perfectly suited to humans, the Emperor said after mastering the Saint's training methods. The way you train it is most important, especially the Gold Saint's methods. He had only traveled through 2 worlds with Axis, but had already seen too much. Axis agreed. The Saint's training is powerful. Bronze and Silver Saints with the Sixth Sense are relatively simple to train. Gold Saints are rare, but with a large base of trainees, the odds of producing Gold Saints are still high. The Emperor sighed. It's a pity. We don't need this for humanity. Humanity should develop on its own. Bringing Cosmo back to our universe would cause unnecessary trouble. Had he obtained Gold Saints training during the Great Crusade, he would have pushed his custodes to reach that level. Even ordinary space marines had stronger bodies than Saints in physical fitness alone, and the custodes would have been exceptional. But Cosmo was dangerously overpowered. If humans everywhere could access it, planets could be destroyed. If a Gold Saint fought at full power, they could level a world. Earth survived only because primordial Mother Earth and the other gods had blessed it. He and Axis could not bless every planet across the cosmos. If the Warhammer universe birthed countless Cosmo-wielding warriors, it would be a disaster. That's also why you didn't allow Chi energy to erupt in the Warhammer universe, said the Emperor. With Axis's current divine power, he could have forced Chi energy into that universe around himself, creating a new destructive force like Sanguinius. But a power that allowed ordinary people to destroy planets after training was too dangerous. For now, humanity should focus on technology. When mankind eventually mastered galaxy or multi-galaxy scale weaponry, they could impose restrictions. Viewing matters from a god's perspective had changed the Emperor. Mortals controlling such powers wasn't always wise. Axis nodded. When I'm strong enough, I can lock a universe's technological level. These things can wait until I become a multiverse-level existence. It was unrealistic for a race to become a divine civilization. Humanity reproduced too quickly for entire universes or multiverses to sustain. As long as our race prospers, that's enough. After you obtain multiverse-level power, you might even create your own universe, the Emperor added. I could theoretically do it now. I just haven't learned the method, Axis replied with a helpless shrug. His current strength was only slightly below an absolute god. Successfully creating a single universe would upgrade him to an absolute god, the pinnacle within one universe. This operation decides whether you can become a multiverse-level existence. I will help you with everything I can, the Emperor said. Axis had helped him too much to ever repay, and the Emperor wanted Axis to reach multiverse level so their universe would be safe from overwhelmingly powerful external threats. I know, father-in-law. This time, just keep an eye on that time god, Kairos. He's the biggest variable, Axis said. I understand. Don't worry, he's only a level 3 god. With time manipulation, he can mess with some level 2 gods, but against me, he can't resist. Don't forget, I'm a primordial god, the Emperor answered confidently. If I take his time divine power, when nurturing the fruit of God, I might not have to wait thousands of years. I can simply adjust time and accelerate its flow, Axis added. The fruit of God consumed pure energy, like the spirit tree fruit absorbing a planet's power. In Warhammer, they had had to mobilize tremendous energy to nourish the fruit, but the Grand Priest had merely waved his hand and increased the number of fruits to 9, significantly improving their quality. After a month of rest and preparation, and with Icaros's intelligence, Axis used his world-traveling power to reach another universe. This, too, was a Saint Seiya world, but it had been more than 20 years since the Holy War. Over a decade earlier, the goddess Athena had led her saints against the god of war, Mars. The true mastermind had been the god of darkness, Apsu. Athena had been defeated. Even the sanctuary's 12 zodiac temples were invaded. Fortunately, a new generation of saints had risen and fought the 12 temples anew. The newly reborn Pegasus awakened the sleeping saints. That generation's Pegasus, this era's Sagittarius gold saint, Seiya, somehow defeated an absolute god. My Pegasus actually defeated a god? Athena was bewildered when she learned this history. She could not imagine her saints ever reaching such heights. For a human to defeat a god was almost inconceivable. Even a Pegasus who had comprehended the 8th sense and awakened a god cloth should have only the slimmest hope against a god. Yet after donning the Sagittarius gold cloth, he had overcome an absolute god. It was an absurdity Athena struggled to accept. Kairos laughed. That's why I said the Pegasus saint is a precious rarity. We could cultivate a Pegasus saint of our own in that universe. He had some reservations about Axis coming to this world. His plan had been to first ascend to Olympus here, eliminate the Olympian gods, and cultivate the Pegasus saint's power until it could challenge a super-god. Axis insisted the Pegasus of this universe had already reached that level, so they should seize the local Pegasus. Still, Kairos felt something was off. They were allies for now, and he needed the divine power only his partners could provide. It's a good thing you didn't bring your gold saints and my bronze saints over, Athena said. She had wanted to bring her Saint Legion, but Axis had stopped her. If righteous saints came and played villains, their combat effectiveness would collapse. Spectres were better suited to villainy. Athena, what's your plan this time? Axis asked his wife. As goddess of wisdom, she would handle strategy. I have a rough plan. We'll play roles that mirror that other world. You will be the underworld king there, but not Hades. You'll still be yourself, Axis. I will act as the Athena of that world, who was defeated by you and became your underworld queen. How does that identity sound? Athena proposed. That works. Axis already had all 108 specters revived and a large number of them mass-produced. Then, we'll proceed like this, and then like this, Athena continued, mapping out specifics in divine thought. According to her estimates, Axis might even have a chance to kill Apsu and seize Apsu's absolute divine power. Some details, especially Axis's ability to kill enemies and take their powers, couldn't be let through to Kairos. Didn't Apsu already die? Axis asked. What are you thinking? Absolute gods aren't that easy to kill. An existence even primordial gods can't slay. Do you think a gold saint, even with the 8th sense, could do it? I suspect Apsu was weakened when he fell, which is why he was defeated. Chapter 455. Go to the Land of Chaos. The new Pluto army. Athena is the Pluto queen. From Athena's point of view, The likeliest explanation was plain. An absolute god, driven out of his own universe, would fall into a period of weakness. Unless he could return home, he could not recover. The absolute god of that era, after creating the universe, had been driven out by a newly born primal god. He had already been wounded by that primal god, who could say how much power he still had. No matter how strong the Pegasus Saint is, he absolutely could not have killed an absolute god. Not even a primal god could do that. Apps isn't dead. He's weakened, or perhaps in a deep sleep, Athena told Axis, laying out her reasoning. The implication was clear. Axis, you could use this opportunity to seize the absolute god's power, the power to create a universe. Axis nodded. What Athena said made sense. The new generation Pegasus Saint, Koga, had been hopelessly outmatched by Apps at first. Apps had defeated him with a casual motion, yet the whole situation had suddenly and inexplicably reversed. Could it really have been only a little girl's soul of light helping, or Athena herself? Heh, things are never as simple as they seem, Kairos said from the edge of the conversation. Didn't I say? The Pegasus Saint has the power to slay gods. It's not divine authority in the usual sense, but a bane of gods, the ability to produce miracles. The Pegasus of old, while still mortal, wounded Hades, the king of the underworld. There's a reason for that. The Pegasus who dares to slay gods can become the instrument of miracles. So you're saying the Pegasus Saint might have actually killed Apps? Axis asked with a faint smile. No, I never said that. Kairos shook his head. To kill an absolute god, the Pegasus Saint would need to grow through successive stages, slaying level 1 main gods, then primal gods, then absolute gods. The Pegasus Saint's current god-slaying power is not enough on its own, but Apps of this world appears to be in a deep restorative sleep. We don't need to provoke him. Yet I must emphasize, the Pegasus Saint of this universe is incredibly powerful. Athena, Axis, sense the gods of this world. Athena and Axis exchanged looks and extended their divine perception, sweeping their cosmos across the world. Athena's face tightened. The Olympian gods were gone. Apollo, Artemis the moon goddess, Poseidon, Ares, Aphrodite. Every Olympian deity had vanished. What happened? Why are all the Olympian gods gone? Athena asked. They were killed by the Pegasus Saint, Kairos said. I'm a god of time. When I first arrived here, I could see this world's past. The Pegasus Saint of this universe is perhaps the most perfect to have arisen. He'd already eliminated several gods before even becoming a gold saint. Gods like the goddess of vengeance, the evil god Lucifer, the sun god Abel, even Hades. Because he slaughtered so many gods, his god-slaying power skyrocketed. Kairos inwardly thanked Axis. If Axis hadn't found this world, he wouldn't have known the Pegasus Saint existed here. Why cultivate one in some other universe when you could harvest a ripe fruit? This Pegasus Saint already had the strongest god-slaying power. Fragmentary glimpses of the future also showed Kairos that another of his incarnations, Saturn, had been to this world. According to the future Saturn had seen, all Athenas were supposed to die, but only the Athena here and the Athena of Kairos' own universe had broken fate. The Athena of his universe had relied entirely on Axis' external aid. The Athena of this world had relied on her own strength and the Pegasus Saint. Kairos is right, Axis said. The Pegasus Saint of this universe did slaughter the Olympians. In many stories, gods fell to mortals, but the Olympians of Saint Seiya were far stronger than those in other mythologies. In this world's Heaven chapter, Athena and her saints had already accomplished the largest god-slaying campaign. The great demon king Seiya had established a terrifying position. That a Pegasus Saint here had slain Olympians was a revelation. This is good news, Axis. This world has two Pegasus Saints, the older generation and the younger, and both possess god-slaying power. If we can secure these two and add the Pegasus Saint from our universe, our plan could work. We could actually threaten Kronos, the overgod, Kairos said, excitement coloring his voice. Since ancient myth, he had dreamed of challenging his brother. Now, with Axis' purple destructive energy and the Pegasus Saint's god-slaying power, that distant dream suddenly felt within reach. Axis listened without much expression. Then we split up. Kairos, you and the Emperor will form one team. Athena and I will form another. With Apps asleep, this was a rare opening. The final opponent in the Holy War was Saturn, the incarnation of an overgod, whose power outstripped that of an ordinary absolute god. Axis needed to prepare fully. Then we'll split temporarily. Gemini God, Superboy, and Grell, you three will play the roles of my four heavenly kings and introduce a third party into this holy war, Axis ordered before departing. While he went to deal with the absolute God, he needed someone to draw attention on Earth. The main factions in the war were Athena's saints and Pallas the goddess of love's Palasites, but those Palasites were actually Saturn's pawns. Axis's four heavenly kings had been described as wielding heavenly weapons: the god-slaying sword of creation, the heaven-shattering blade of destruction, the martial god's light spirit sword, and the heavy blast thunderslash blade. Their power should have been around level 2 god, and with their blessed swords they would be invincible below level 1 god. Everyone agreed. Axis and Athena vanished into the void, heading toward the land of chaos. The Emperor would accompany Icarus and help him restore his divine power, while Grell and the Gemini god Superboy began to enact Axis's plan. Under the Emperor's cosmos, absolute order, and sun-like majesty, Kairos's aura hid perfectly. The god of time grumbled inwardly about not rushing into Earth's battle, but he had to hide at the edge of the galaxy and watch. He also had to monitor any anomalies from the Overgod's incarnations. If he were discovered, all would be lost. Better yet, this newly ascended primal god, the Emperor, could now lend him divine power, perhaps pushing Kairos up to level 1 god before the final clash. "Neos, I entrust my divine power to you," Kairos said. "Leave it to me. I will give you primordial divine power," the Emperor replied. As a world king god, and a great world king god, the Emperor had no shortage of divine energy. Axis and Athena used the primordial god's perception of cosmic rules to locate their target, a hidden void deep within the universe where even starlight seemed swallowed. A vast, ancient, silent darkness radiated from it, a feeling that even made Axis's heart stir. "Is that where Apophis slumbers?" Axis asked, studying the blackness. The chaotic nebula patterns on his god cloth shifted subtly, adapting to the faint gravity and rule distortions coming from the void. "There's no doubt." Athena's expression was stone still. The scepter of victory in her hand glowed a soft gold, pushing back the cold, deathly stillness that threatened to close in. "This darkness is pure and primordial, far beyond Hades' realm of death. It's the nothingness that existed before the universe. He hasn't truly died, he's in the deepest restorative sleep. We must be extremely careful. Even in slumber, an absolute god's instinctive counterattacks are extraordinary." "I know. That's why we have to strike while he's down." Axis's eyes flashed. The power of Xantia stirred within him. Seizing an absolute god's power was temptation enough to drive any god mad. It was a once-in-a-lifetime chance. The two became a golden streak and a chaotic stream of light, plunging into the domain of absolute darkness where even light could not escape. On Earth, a new storm had already erupted. Superboy, Grell, and the death god Thanatos and sleep god Hypnos, temporarily empowered by Axis to near second-tier god level, led a legion of specters revitalized by Axis's blessing and descended on the battlefield where Sanctuary and Pallas's forces clashed. The Holy War was nearing its end. After the death of Genbu, the gold saint of the Gladiatorial Academy, Athena had led the saints in a full-scale assault on the city, where Pallas, the goddess of love, had taken residence. In this decisive battle, the saints and Pallasites fought fiercely as Athena drove her army forward. Then another army dropped into the fray. "Ha ha! These saints and your Pallasites are nothing," Superboy roared as he hovered in the air, clad in dark red battle armor forged from underworld obsidian and orichalcum, fused with his divine power. He looked down on the two sides, momentarily stalled by his sudden arrival, and laughed arrogantly. Now a god of power, his perception was razor-sharp. Most of the fighters below were, to him, negligible. Before a god, seventh sense saints were helpless. Compared to him, they were like mortals. Grell's new battle armor was dark red and deep purple, the Omega symbol faint on her chest, radiating a cold wave of destruction. Her gaze settled on a young man in a pink cloth fighting a Pallasite, Koga of Pegasus. Axis had specifically instructed them to watch him and his group. These people must not be harmed. Thanatos and Hypnos carried the gravitas of underworld magnates, but their cosmos was far deeper and more unfathomable than in Hades' era, clearly enhanced under Axis's command. With a single motion, the specters behind them swept out like a black tide, their eyes cruel and mocking as they observed their prey. "Who are you?" Saori Kido, the Athena of this world, felt the new, oppressive force of death and destruction and stiffened. These uninvited gods were powerful but unfamiliar, neither Palasites nor gods she knew. "This is impossible. Thanatos and Hypnos were already defeated by us. How are they here?" Saya, the gold saint of Sagittarius, said. A veteran of the previous Holy War, he recognized some faces, Thanatos and Hypnos, and the specters, but the other two gods were strangers. One exuded raw might, the other radiated pure destruction. Even the weakest specters were at seventh sense level, an army equivalent to over 100 gold saints. It was insane. "We are here to kill you. Surrender to the divine power of the God of Power." Superboy sneered, clapping his fists together so the impact made the air cry out. The power rippled through space. "Athena of this world, we are the new underworld army under His Majesty Axis," Thanatos announced. "We act by command of His Majesty and Queen Athena to take over this world's underworld, also to deal with you mere fodder." The saints and even some Palasites exchanged stunned looks. "Queen Athena?" That title carried weight. "You still haven't given up? Who is this Axis? Is he trying to take Miss Saori away?" Saya demanded. Gods abducting Athena to make her a bride had happened before. Poseidon, and even the goddess's brother, had entertained the idea. Saya had slain gods for such crimes more than once. "Miss Saori will not go with you," Fudo, the gold saint of Virgo, said. Saori felt bewildered. These were clearly the underworld army, but Hades had been the underworld king, and Hades had been killed 20 years earlier. "Who is Axis? Is he the new underworld king? I will not marry another god." "Don't misunderstand," Hypnos said, laughing. "His Highness Axis is not your Hades. He is the Terminator of Hades from another universe. His Highness Axis defeated Hades and married the Athena of our universe. Now Axis has come to your world, so we will assume control." This is impossible," Saya stammered. "You mean an Athena from another world? Did she lose the war there?" "How could this be? We are the saints who protect the earth. We didn't lose to the underworld army." "Exactly. How could we lose to the underworld king's dogs?" murmured the saints as whispers broke out among them. None of the saints could believe what they were seeing. How could their goddess marry the king of the underworld? "Axis? Princess Athena?" Both Saori and Pallas's Athena stared in disbelief. Saori in particular couldn't understand how another version of herself could be a princess who led an army of the underworld against her own world. "Nonsense!" Ares Kiki bellowed. "It's a slander, an insult to the goddess. Outrageous! Shameless wretches! How dare you blaspheme the protector of the earth, goddess Athena?" For a moment, the saints were filled with righteous fury. They could not accept that their goddess might be married, let alone to a version of Athena from another universe allied with Hades. "You asked for it." Superboy's eyes glowed crimson. His heat vision, a terrifying mix of divine power and Kryptonian strength, erupted instantly, aimed at the gold saints around Athena. Axis had ordered that Athena not be harmed, so his target was the saints. A golden barrier flashed up before Saori, the famous crystal wall, Ares' ultimate defense, said to block attacks and reflect them back twice as strong. "You can't break through my defense," Kiki shouted. Yet a single punch from the attacker shattered the crystal wall, and the blow kept coming. At the last moment, Athena raised her golden shield and took the hit. Tiny hairline cracks spidered across the goddess's shield. That one strike hadn't even been Superboy's full power, nor had he tapped into Cosmos. Still, it had dented divine armor. The saints stared in shocked realization of how frighteningly strong he was. "Great god of strength, don't waste your time on these scraps. Leave them to us," said a resurrected specter in a wyvern surplice. These specters were not the recent ones Superboy had already defeated, but the deadly veterans from the last Holy War, the LC era resurrected by Axis. They were far more seasoned and dangerous, especially the wyvern Rhadamanthus. In the last war, Rhadamanthus had fought the Scorpio of the previous generation to a mutual annihilation in Atlantis, ripped out his own heart before King Aaron, and been reborn as a wyvern god when Aaron pumped him full of underworld blood. He'd even withstood Regulus of Leo and nearly overpowered the Gold Saints. That Rhadamanthus had been a crucial figure in the Saints' victory back then. The current wyvern, however, paled in comparison. Axis's resurrected LC specters had been further empowered. The three judges of the underworld themselves were granted divine blood from Hades' corpse. Axis's own divinity was on an entirely different scale. Ordinary warriors and even ordinary gods couldn't bear it. Tsk, so weak. Not even fun. I'll leave them to you, Radamanthes, Superboy sneered. Evidently bored, Greel snorted and stepped forward, eyes locking on Pegasus Koga as he charged after his injured comrade. This brat is mine. His power is very interesting. Omega's light burned in her eyes. The Elder had told her to guard this world's Pegasus saint, not to kill him, but to provoke and refine his fighting spirit. Rumor had it this boy harbored Omega's power. She intended to bring it out. Greel's crimson power seized Koga's friends, Soma, Yuna, Ryuhu, and Haruto, dragging them into the fight with the aim of forcing Koga to awaken his true strength. Lord Axis had said that to awaken Omega's power, the boy and his companions needed to be relentlessly tested. Don't underestimate us, Koga grunted. We'll show you what friendship can do. The 6 young bronze saints launched themselves at Greel together. Entertain me. I won't kill you so easily, Greel purred, charging with a massive scythe axe. Thanatos and Hypnos smiled cruelly as they each moved toward 2 of Pallas's 4 heavenly kings. We old men will test the Pallasites, Thanatos said. You claim to be warriors of the super-god Saturn. Don't disappoint us. Let me have some fun too, Superboy snorted, following Thanatos and Hypnos to the Pallasites. He preferred facing the 4 heavenly kings with their holy swords rather than weak gold saints. He wanted to see if their weapons could cut him. Superboy's body was already so strong that the god cloths were a restraint, his power unleashed fully only when his cloths were torn. Across the battlefield, the specters roared and surged. Maximum alert shockwave, cosmic grand illusion, stardust string. This time the specters attacked both Athena's saints and the Pallasites. The duel between saints and Pallasites had become a 3-way free-for-all. My saints, conserve your strength for now, Saori ordered after taking in the chaos. Let the specters and Pallasites fight each other. The situation is unclear. We will withdraw briefly. From the start of the Holy War, she had suspected her counterpart was a pawn controlled by forces capable of resurrecting a god, an absolute god, or a super god. The appearance of another universe's underworld king and an alternate Athena, backed by gods and specters, meant the stakes had skyrocketed. Ironically, it also gave Saori an opening. Around her stood 5 gold saints, Virgo Fudo, Aries Kiki, Libra Shiryu, Sagittarius Seiya, and Taurus Harbinger, with the Gemini gold saint rushing to the front as well. Saori even considered handing Aquarius's cloth to Hyoga and Leo's to Ikki to bolster their strength. The original duel had instantaneously devolved into a brutal, chaotic melee. Above the ruins of Pallas Belta, Cosmos Light, Omega Crimson, the death key of the underworld, and the Pallasites' time, Cosmos collided in a lethal tangle. Behind that chaos, Axis and the otherworld Athena were slipping toward the sleeping creator. A hunt for an absolute god had begun in earnest. At the edge of the galaxy, the Emperor, the patient hunter, watched in silence, guarding time and monitoring variables, the avatar of the supergod, Saturn. The war in the sanctuary was a diversion. The true storm was in the land of chaos. Could Axis climb to multiversal power by trampling absolute gods? This was the moment to find out. Thanatos and Hypnos each found a Pallasite to toy with. War god Light Coming Sword? Interesting, Hypnos mused as he drifted toward Gallus and his giant blade, the air already seeded with invisible illusions of sleep. Heavy blast thunder slash blade, strong momentum. Let me stretch my joints, Thanatos snarled as he charged at Aegeon, Death's little cosmos coalescing into shockwaves. Superboy glanced at them and snorted. The 2 were easy targets. What he craved were the strongest, Titan, bearer of the god creation sword, and Hyperion, whose heaven and earth destruction slash crackled with destruction. You 2 must be the strongest, he grinned, cracking his neck. Come at me together. Let me warm up. Titan braced, holding the god creation sword horizontally. The sword radiated creation and protection. Arrogant fool, how dare you challenge both of us, he shouted. Hyperion's destructive energy boiled around his crimson blade. You do not know your place. I will show you true destruction. You're Saturn's warriors, yes? Superboy said, cocking his head. Your holy swords were given by Saturn, right? Titan answered, offended. We are warriors of Lady Pallas. Don't get us wrong. Ha! That's the funniest thing I've heard, Superboy replied coldly. A dead girl from millennia ago training you and giving you holy swords? Do you take yourselves for fools? He was no mere brute. His Kryptonian intellect was sharp, if he rarely applied it. Titan, don't move. I'll handle him, Hyperion snapped, eager to test whether his sword could slay a god. Superboy laughed and charged like a human cannonball, relying on raw divinity and strength rather than beams or vision. A sonic boom tore through the air. Hyperion charged too, blade meeting fist. "Ha, ignorant fool! You dare match my holy sword with your fist?" Hyperion roared. His weapon had shattered a divine realm, forged by a god. Yet instead of the sword cleaving Superboy, the two locked and the heaven and earth destruction slash itself groaned, tiny cracks appearing along the blade. "Do you think this blade can harm my divine body? I am the god of strength," Superboy bellowed, pushing power until the red greatsword shattered. He slammed into Hyperion, seized him by the throat, and hurled him to the ground. Titan cried out over his fallen comrade, but before he could act, Superboy stomped on Hyperion's cloth, tore off his arm in brutal fashion, and then dismembered and decapitated him while grinning savagely. The four heavenly kings screamed, surprised to fall so quickly. Titan could not stand idly by. He lunged with the god creation sword, desperate to end the monster's rampage. Superboy took the blade's energy head-on with fists covered in divine power. Beams and slashes exploded around them but had no lasting effect on the god of strength. He even grabbed Titan's sword by the blade without injury. "This sword is mine," Superboy growled and tried to wrench it free. Titan swung to cut him free, but Superboy's kick struck Titan's abdomen with such force that the king flew like a meteor, crashing through giant stone pillars before tumbling to the ground, fate uncertain. Meanwhile, the LC-era specters, led by Rhadamanthus, tore into the Saints and the Palasites like predators. Their battle experience, refined techniques, and little cosmos were far beyond this era's fighters, closer to second-class god level. Letting them and the Palasites bleed each other out was the best tactic for now. Seiya, Shiryu, Fudo, Kiki, Harbinger, and the other Gold Saints formed a protective screen around Saori and began a tactical retreat, eyes never leaving the cataclysmic fights. Kuga and his friends remained trapped by Greel, unable to free themselves. "Seiya, that woman's armor is similar to Kuga's, but darker, more violent," Shiryu observed, voice low. Seiya clenched his fists. "Miss Saori, I can feel something. Superboy, his power is monstrous. What happened? How could Athena marry someone called Hades?" They were filled with questions, but the immediacy of battle drowned them out. "I don't know either," Saori said, "but conserve your strength." She watched as Superboy's duel with Titan turned white-hot. The god creation sword exploded in energy again and again, and Superboy met every blast with his fists, each punch detonating a sword attack and numbing Titan's arm. When Superboy seized the blade, Titan's attempts to sever his hand failed. The sword could not harm him. Titan's swing was met with a kick that sent him hurtling through stone. He crashed and lay motionless. The other battles followed swiftly. Hypnos' dream assault lulled Gallus into eternal sleep as his light-coming sword missed again and again. Thanatos crushed Aegeon, death shockwaves shredding the heavy blast thunder slash blade until Aegeon's chronotector broke and he fell. Greel toyed with Kuga and the young saints like a cat with mice, teasing and goading the nascent Pegasus. Far away in the darker reaches of the universe, Axis and the otherworld Athena slipped into the temple where the absolute god Apsu slumbered. The hunt for the creator in the land of chaos had begun in earnest. Chapter 457, Kill Apsu, Transform, and the absolute god Axis descends. This chaotic expanse was not any known star field in the universe. It was a primitive, unknown, and wondrous place, the womb of chaos where Apsu had dwelt before the universe was born. There were no stars, no light or darkness in the usual sense, not even stable concepts of time and space, only endless, roiling currents of primordial chaotic energy. They shifted in uncanny hues and unpredictable shapes, sometimes forming vortexes that devoured everything, sometimes condensing into crystals of terrifying power, and sometimes dispersing into nothingness. This was the leftover ruin from the universe's birth and the chosen resting place of the absolute god Apsu. His aura saturated the place, making it even more dangerous and unstable. Any ordinary god who stepped here without special protection or guidance would be assimilated or disintegrated into the chaos. Axis and Athena moved through that chaos, wrapped in the light of their own divine power. Axis's origin cosmos was like a miniature cosmic singularity, constantly being born and destroyed, repelling, absorbing, and transforming the approaching chaotic energy. Athena spread a golden barrier of divine power to resist the currents. "The currents here are truly terrifying," Athena observed. "In the God's Passage, if one lacks divine blood or godhood, you're torn apart. But here even a slightly weaker Tier 3 or Tier 2 god would be shredded on entry. Even a Tier 1 god could only hold out a moment. Only primordial gods like us can come and go freely. No wonder he chose to sleep here." "How pathetic," Axis said calmly, a chill beneath his words. "To create a universe and then be expelled by your children, grievously wounded, reduced to this, only able to linger here." His expression sharpened. "That is precisely my opportunity. He is formidable. He chose a safe place to sleep, but he is grievously wounded. If nothing unexpected happens, he should never awaken. I can take this chance to finish him." Axis's voice carried the contempt of someone who believed the moment to be irrevocable. Athena stood beside him. "I can only support you spiritually, Axis. The life of an absolute god is immense. Even if a primordial god can defeat one, they cannot truly kill them, especially not an absolute god, even in a weakened slumber." She knew Axis had a peculiar power. He could absorb an enemy's divine power after killing them. Axis intended to use that ability to seize Apsu's power. But killing an absolute god was no simple feat. Otherwise, primordial gods within the universe would have tried long ago. They had only expelled Apsu then. After being driven out for 13.8 billion years, Apsu had returned to the universe he created, severely wounded and plunged into an absolute slumber that would never naturally end. He had only passive defenses left, useless against someone like Axis. "Don't worry. I am entirely confident I can kill him and take his divine power," Axis replied. He was not like the other primordial gods. Apsu's power was vast, but Axis intended to rely on chi energy and the god of destruction energy, amplified by his god Cosmos. With that blessing, his destructive energy could exceed previous limits. He did not even need Pegasus's power for this. That was why he had dared to cooperate with Kairos. "Be careful. Even while he sleeps, his instinctive defenses," Athena warned, clutching her staff of victory, golden cosmos coiled and ready to support at a moment's notice. She, too, was a primordial god now, and could lend some aid, at least a portion of her divine power. "No matter," Axis said. "Before true god of destruction energy, defenses are futile." He inhaled deeply. The origin microcosmos within him, a fusion of multiple cosmic systems, flared. The deep purple god of destruction energy no longer acted as an independent force. It became the core destruction, rule manifesting through his cosmos. Golden red divine power supplied immense energy. Emerald life chi kept output stable and controlled, and chaotic starlight formed the foundation that commanded everything. His eyes transformed into two violently exploding, ever-recreating miniature singularities. The god of destruction's sword in his hand hummed. The purple light along its blade was austere but suffused with an aura of annihilation that made even primordial Athena feel something akin to dread. "Chaos absolute god Apsu, your life ends here, and your power will be mine," Axis intoned, raising the sword so the tip pointed at the dark core of the absolute god. The deep purple god of destruction energy, blessed by his divine cosmos, pierced into Apsu's form. Buzz. Apsu's absolutely dark body sensed an ultimate threat. Even in deep slumber, the creator god's instinctive defense awoke. An absolute darkness, barrier, layers millionfold deeper than the surrounding dark, bloomed outward. Within it flowed shattered galaxies and phantom images of gods and demons, a final condensed shield drawn from the universe's dawn, the resentment and despair of creation. It could devour and assimilate all forms of energy and rule-based attacks. But Axis's attack was not a mere energetic strike. It was destruction personified, a rule-based annihilation. The absolute god's instinctive shield, powerful as it was, did nothing. Axis placed both hands on the hilt. The purple god of destruction power blazed as he forced the sword into Apsu's heart. Swoosh! The thin purple line of destruction touched the absolute darkness, and, as if pressed by a red-hot branding iron, silently burned a small hole through it. The barrier convulsed, attempting to heal, but the lingering purple edge at the breach stubbornly prevented repair. The line passed through and struck Apsu's dark core. A roar, impossible to hear with ears, but it resounded in the deepest parts of Axis's and Athena's souls, erupted, filled with pain, anger, and shock. Apsu's dormant, incomplete consciousness was provoked, briefly stirred by the mortal agony. He sought to escape death. As one of the universe's creators and a chaos absolute god, Apsu still had means to save himself, but only against gods below primordial rank. He mobilized all remaining power. The chaotic sea boiled and became billions of dark tentacles, each carrying power that could obliterate stars and corrupt rules, intent on overwhelming Axis. The rules of this chaotic realm convulsed violently to crush the intruder. This fury meant little to Axis and Athena. Those forces could slay all below primordial level, but were ineffective against them. Struggling in vain. "Accept your fate, Apsu," Axis snorted, unmoved. The origin micro-universe around him expanded into a rising domain of destruction. The dark tentacles slammed into it and were shredded, decomposed, and absorbed by the god of destruction energy, being born and annihilated in that domain, becoming nourishment. The purple thread inside Apsu's body spread like a lethal virus, proliferating and destroying from within. Apsu's divine body, pure darkness, began to disintegrate. Entire sections vanished like weathered sculptures, returning to true nothingness. The god of destruction energy did not merely consume matter and energy, it struck at the very concept of Apsu's existence. "Impossible! How dare you?" came disjointed, horrified soul fluctuations, Apsu's final rage and disbelief. But he was beyond salvation. Axis's expression remained blank. The god of destruction's sword glowed, and even more destructive energy surged down the line. "Be destroyed, Apsu. You have no chance." Face reality. Boom. Conceptual anguish roared. Apsu's physical shell was controlled by Axis's will. Purple energy enveloped the dark god's husk. The massive body froze then, like black paper set alight, transformed into countless swirling black particles that then vanished, as if he had never existed. The suffocating pressure and that dark aura permeating chaos evaporated. Absolute God Apsu, the creator, had been utterly slain by Axis while in slumber. The whole process had been a flash, but to Athena it felt impossibly quick. She had not even managed to offer aid. She stared at the empty space where Apsu's body had been, shock and disbelief on her face. An absolute god, gone in an instant? "I curse you, outsider. I will curse you. You will die," Apsu's dying voice seemed to whisper. But Axis paid it no mind. What was a dying god's curse against him? Apsu's divine power tried to form a curse, but it was impotent. Axis had already begun to absorb the dark god's power. Athena watched, stunned. She had not expected Axis to succeed so cleanly. Even against a sleeping absolute god, it was unbelievable. What level had Axis's power reached? As Apsu's divine power broke apart, a boundless, pure darkness, containing the twin essences of creation and nothingness, threatened to erupt and dissipate into the chaotic sea. Axis roared, "Xantia power! Devour! Absorb this absolute god power for me!" The mysterious Xantia power activated. An invisible, gigantic rune vortex spun above his head, issuing terrifying suction. The dark divine energy, which had been on the verge of dispersal, poured into Axis as rivers returning to the sea. "Ah!" Even Axis, already halfway to absolute godhood, groaned as a vast influx of supreme power tore through him. His divine body felt like it might burst. His divine cloth cracked as the skin beneath split, revealing divine blood threaded with chaotic starlight and purple god of destruction energy. Yet his eyes shone with exhilaration. "If I cannot subdue this power, how can I claim absolute godhood?" His divine micro-universe operated like an uncompromising furnace, suppressing, organizing, and merging the acquired absolute divine power. Athena guarded anxiously. She could feel the world-shaking transformation within Axis. His aura climbed at an impossible rate toward a critical threshold. She could only stand by and silently bless him, hoping he could safely integrate the power. Time seemed to lose meaning. Axis's power formed an absolute chaotic domain, swallowing the absolute divine power. Around him, a giant purple shell of chaotic energy and purple destruction energy coalesced, then was absorbed. Axis's divine power multiplied at a terrifying speed. Although he had already reached half-step absolute god, Only by truly ingesting an absolute god's power did he understand the scale of his audacity. If an absolute god's power was 10, his half-step state was barely 2. Still, with his Saiyan physique and the newly enhanced divine cloth, Axis gritted his teeth and used God of Destruction energy to digest and integrate the absolute power. Finally, buzz. A new pressure, transcending all things, like the will of the universe, erupted from within Axis. His cracked body healed instantly. His divine cloth evolved into something older and deeper. The chaotic nebula patterns along it seemed to come alive, containing an endlessly evolving multiversal landscape. The God of Destruction's sword gained an aura of eternal shadow, and its potency doubled. He opened his eyes. His left eye held the light of creation, constantly birthing galaxies. His right eye was the absolute darkness to which all things returned. Creation and destruction, light and nothingness, were balanced within him. At that moment, having seized and merged all of Apsu's divine power, Axis crossed the final threshold. His life level transformed. He ascended to the supreme realm, absolute God, single universe peak. He had even brushed the edges of multiversal power. Axis could now create a single universe, then a second and third. When enough single universes gathered, they could converge into a multiverse, and his power could be further sublimated. "That's good. You succeeded." "Axis," Athena murmured, watching him. Her heart flooded with shock and joy. Axis felt the boundless power flowing within him. With a thought, he could open star rivers or return the universe to nothing. A satisfied smile touched his lips. Only after fully grasping an absolute god's power did Axis realize the cruel injustice of Apsu's defeat. The creator had expended vast energy creating the universe and had been defeated by a newborn primordial god inside it. After wandering for eons and finally returning, he had been slain by a young unknown. Now that power belonged to Axis, and with it, absolute god Axis had descended. After absorbing Apsu's power, the chaotic energy in the land of chaos gradually calmed, as if bowing to a newly born absolute god. Axis stood in the void, no longer filled with mere divine might, but with the cosmic laws that embodied creation and destruction. He clenched his fist slightly, feeling power surge through him, power that could reshape galaxies or return all things to nothing. This is the power of an absolute god. Axis' voice was calm, but carried a majesty that made the land of chaos itself tremble. His left eye held the dawn of a universe, nebulae birthing within it. His right eye was the end of all things, eternal annihilation. Creation and destruction found perfect balance and cosmic unity in him. Athena watched him, her beautiful eyes glittering with shock and immense relief. Her husband had ascended to one of the highest thrones of divinity in this universe. It was a vindication of her judgment, and proof, she thought wryly, that she deserved the title of Goddess of Wisdom. The war on Earth should end now. Axis's gaze pierced infinite space and instantly located the battlefield in Palace City on Earth. "Athena, let's go. It's time to finish this." He reached for Athena's waist. Without effort, the surrounding chaos formed a stable passage under the will of an absolute god. Where Axis stood, rules existed. There was the truth of the universe. In the next moment, they were gone from the land of chaos. On Earth, the ruins of Palace City were a ruinous battlefield. The underworld Spectre army, led by LC-era powerhouses like Radamanthus, pressed the remaining Saints and Palasites. Greer was toying with Koga and his companions, Omega sparks flying where their blows collided. Stimulated by the Omega Goddess, the new generation of Bronze Saints had awakened a trace of Omega power. Their bronze cloths had transformed, not by divine blood like the old divine cloths, but by a miracle born of cosmic rules. Even so, the Omega Goddess could not bring everyone to heal. Greer's attention, however, was fixed on the boy in the Equuleus bronze cloth. The power in him felt like his father Darkseid's, only stronger. This brat was the true threat. Ultraman stood on an unconscious Titan, tossing the slightly dimmed divine sword of creation in one hand and looking down on terrified foes. Death God and Sleep God had dispatched their opponents. Gallus and Aegeon lay on the ground, their weapons scattered. Strengthened by Axis, Death God and Sleep God had reached a new realm of divine power. Dealing with mortal-level opponents was easy. The gap between gods and mortals remained vast, and the four heavenly kings lacked the raw burst of power Bronze Saints could produce against true gods. Boring. This is boring. Ultraman laughed wildly, his voice cracking the ground. Is this the strength of this universe's mighty? This so-called divine sword that created the world, nothing under my iron fist. They're not even worth warming up for. All trash. Saori Kido and Gold Saints like Seiya stood grim. Their defensive formation was on the verge of collapse beneath the divine might of the underworld specters, Greer and Ultraman. The enemies before them were despairingly powerful, especially Ultraman, who called himself the god of strength. Without warning, a vast, indescribable pressure descended on the battlefield. Time itself seemed to freeze. Everyone fighting, underworld specters, saints, palasites, halted as if gripped by an invisible giant hand. Souls trembled, cosmoses wailed. The sky darkened, not with clouds, but because the universe's rules were being rewritten. A chaotic nebula replaced the blue sky. Within it, multiple worlds seemed to be undergoing birth and death cycles. Two figures appeared silently at the battlefield's center, as if they had always been there. Absolute Axis had come down. The power of a true absolute god was beyond mortal imagination. If mortals could not conceive the Big Bang, that event was trivial for an absolute god, for creating a universe required making a new Big Bang. Omega's power was Big Bang power, and absolute god ought to possess it. Lord Axis, welcome back. Greer, Ultraman, Death God, Sleep God, and the underworld specters immediately dropped to one knee, heads bowed in fanatical reverence. Axis's followers had guessed he had obtained absolute god power. He had become a true absolute powerhouse, wielding cosmic rule-level might that surpassed all. Saori, Seiya, Koga, and the rest looked on in horror. Axis stood there, not particularly tall, yet he seemed to fill heaven and earth, the very center of the universe. His presence nearly froze the divine power within them. Resistance felt impossible. Athena beside him carried an aura deeper and stronger than the Athena they knew. Saori's voice cracked. Absolute God? Even as a goddess, she felt the supreme aura on Axis, an authority beyond the primordial gods, different from her memory of Zeus or even Hades. This was creator-level power. It was hopeless. The saints could not contend with such a being. Even awakened Omega power offered only a sliver of hope. Saori's eyes flicked to her counterpart from another universe. She had never imagined the struggle for the one and only Athena would end this way. The other Athena had barely reached primordial god level, while the man she loved was already an absolute god. She looked at Seiya beside her, a desperate plea. Could he perform a miracle and strike down a god, an absolute god once more? In that moment, Pegasus was the only one she could rely on. Lord Axis, all enemies have been defeated. Only those you want remain, Death God and Sleep God reported. Lord Axis, the final battle has arrived. Everything rests on your decision, Greer added, approaching. Axis's gaze slowly scanned the battlefield and settled on Pegasus Koga, wounded, suppressed by Greer, yet defiantly glaring. God-slaying power, truly marvelous, Axis murmured. He felt the peculiar power inside Koga that could, in the tiniest way, threaten his new absolute form. Kairos and Athena had been right. The Pegasus Saint was extraordinary. Two Pegasus Saints now stood in this world, one from the previous generation and one from the new, two sources of God-slaying power. Axis ignored Saori and Seiya's perplexed faces and raised his hand. Saturn, you've watched long enough. Aren't you going to show yourself? Or shall I crush all your toys myself? He looked toward the boy wearing the Equilius cloth. What do you mean by that? None of us are called Saturn. The new Bronze Saints exchanged confused looks. Eden, clearer of thought, watched Subaru closely. He had already suspected this. Perhaps this awakened being could contend with Axis. I'm not talking to you, Axis continued. Saturn, are you coming out? The absolute god's voice pressed on everyone like a great bell into the depths of their souls. Space in the battlefield rippled like water, and a young man in a simple blue and red robe stepped out. Short black hair, calm demeanor, the image of an ordinary boy. Yet all the gods present, Athena included, constricted their pupils. The time and space beneath his feet had fallen into absolute stillness, not a suppression of cosmos, but the surrender of time's rules. And at some unknown moment, Equilius Subaru had vanished, or rather, he never truly existed here. When the super-god avatar awakened, its body had disintegrated, absent from this universe. Super-god avatar, Athena said gravely, tightening her grip on the Staff of Victory. Subaru, the avatar of Saturn, looked at Axis with calm surprise. Outsider, you devoured apps. You stole this universe's creation authority. Your existence disrupts the predetermined flow of time. I came to test Athena, and you have spoiled my plans. Do you intend to become my enemy? The absolute god's power was immense, but before a super god, even an avatar, it might be useless. Cosmic law says the strong prey on the weak. Apps was defeated. I took his power. What's wrong with that? Axis answered calmly. As for time, after today I will redefine it. Arrogant. Saturn's voice was soft. He raised a finger and unleashed terrifying super god power. Stasis, Chronos catastrophe. No earth-shattering explosion signaled it. Instead, all rules around Axis, time, space, light, shadow, energy, matter, even concept flow, solidified and stopped. The super god's authority over time had frozen all things to the starting point of eternal annihilation. Saori, Seiya, and the others stared in horror. Even their thoughts struggled. Axis, at the stasis's core, only smiled. Ha ha ha! The super god's time power is deep, but you want to freeze me? Not enough. His absolute cosmos erupted. He wielded a new force built from Apps' chaotic creation, infused with God of Destruction energy, World King God divine power, and the battle blood of Saiyans. Origin blast, final flash. Creation and destruction burst from Axis simultaneously. The super god's time authority was torn apart by absolute power. Axis had seen time's power in the Warhammer universe and had studied it. Before crossing over, he had learned some of it from Kairos. Milos had gained divine power from Axis, and Axis, in turn, had taken time's power. Both took what they needed. The super god avatar's power was weaker than the true body's. It could not imprison Axis, and the Saiyan ferocity in Axis had now erupted. Even as a god, Axis fought like a warrior, his combat might exceeding normally born absolute gods. Frozen space cracked like shattered glass. Turbulent energy blew away nearby underworld specters and palasites. Subaru's eyes finally showed surprise. You can actually break the shackles of time. If your true body came, perhaps you could truly match me. A mere avatar, do you presume to judge my crimes? Axis sneered and stepped, instantly crossing space. His fist, burning with chaotic starlight and purple destructive energy, flew at Subaru. Enough talk. Take this punch. Saturn crossed his arms to block. Time around him accelerated billions of times, layers of time barriers forming. Fist met time barriers. Roar. The barriers shattered layer by layer and regenerated just as fast. A terrifying spherical shockwave gouged the landscape. Most of Palace City was obliterated. The ground plunged tens of meters downward. Seiya, Shiryu, and the others were saved by Athena's hastily deployed golden shield, but their eyes were wide with horror. This battle was almost too much to witness. Ultraman, Greer, and other gods exerted their full power to resist, their reverence for Axis peaking. Subaru was blasted backward, arms trembling, composure shaken. Your power surpasses an ordinary absolute god, Saturn said sharply. I must show more of my true ability. Only seeing that now? Too late, Axis pressed. The god of destruction's sword materialized again, this time wreathed in chaos creation. Take this sword, chaos, final destruction slash. A purple-black sword beam tore through the universe, annihilating matter, erasing rules, severing timelines. Subaru summoned an ancient, massive scythe, seeming made of time itself, the super god's true eternal ring dance, and crimson battle armor to match. Even a super god's incarnation readied itself fully. Endless cycle. Saturn swung, the blade containing the birth and death cycles of countless spacetimes, forming a temporal vortex meant to trap and wear down Axis' destructive beam. The clash blew the sky open. The earth trembled. At the height of the collision, Saori's eyes flashed with wisdom. She shouted to Koga, "Now, Koga, unleash all your Omega power. For Saori, for this world." At the same moment, Athena, beside Axis, sent a silent command through her cosmos. Axis felt it. Seize the god-slaying power. Koga, suppressed by Gale and in turmoil at Saturn's arrival, heard Saori's cry and saw the world-shattering clash. His determination to protect her and their friends overwhelmed him. "Ah, Omega! Burn my cosmos!" Koga roared, and the dormant Omega power ignited, a deep red light soaring into the sky and briefly breaking Gale's hold. The sudden burst of god-slaying power subtly interfered with Subaru's perfect temporal control. A minuscule hesitation flickered in Saturn's movements. For an absolute god, that tiny flaw was enough. Axis had been pressing hard while Saturn had been testing. If the super god incarnation had been truly unleashed, Axis might have been defeated. But now Axis's combat instincts seized the opening. He maintained chaos. Final destruction slash with his left hand to hold the eternal ring dance, while his right shot through chaotic currents and grabbed Koga, who burned with Omega light. Axis knew the way to deal with resilient protagonists was to finish them outright. You could not give them time to rise and cry, "Burn my cosmos." He acted on that rule. "No, Koga." Seiya tried to move, but was pinned by absolute god-level pressure. Sori raised her staff of victory in desperation, but it was useless. No one had expected an absolute god to strike by stealth. Axis' palm enveloped the light. The Omega erupted and was compressed in his hand. God-slaying power, mine. His voice was cold. He clenched his hand, and Xantia's consuming power activated. The red Omega light immediately dimmed and died. Pegasus Koga, youth bearing the world's god-slaying power, shattered like glass, turning into pure energy that dissipated into Axis's grasp. Only an extraordinarily pure fragment, a power specifically effective against gods, was extracted and devoured by Axis. Koga, Seiya, Soma, Yuna, and the others screamed. Axis paid no heed. He integrated that sliver of god-slaying power into his absolute divine power. Its quantity didn't much increase, but its nature did. His destructive efficacy against divine beings altered profoundly. "Bastard!" Saturn's incarnation roared. To kill an observation target and steal such power was a clear provocation. Angry? Not finished yet. Axis felt his strength mutate in a wondrous way after integrating the god-slaying power. He abandoned the energy clash and vanished. In the next instant, he stood in front of Subaru. The god-slaying characteristic, god of destruction energy, and the Omega power he had stolen condensed into his fist. "This punch is to thank you for this gift. End it, Saturn. Your power is mine now." Super God, god of destruction energy, god-slaying smash fist. The blow didn't explode so much as erase. Saturn's incarnation screamed as his body began to disintegrate. He frantically mobilized Time's power to defend or retreat, but Time itself was suppressed and solidified by Axis' absolute will. "No!" Saturn's cry was cut short as Axis's fist struck his chest, piercing armor and flesh. The super god's eternal divine cloth meant nothing against Axis's combined might. This was a strike that fused god of destruction energy, god-slaying power, and the accumulated cosmos of Axis, encompassing nearly all the power he had acquired to this point. There was no blast, only annihilation. Subaru's body evaporated from the point of impact as if erased. The eternal ring dance shattered and dissipated along with him. The super god incarnation was utterly obliterated by Axis in a single decisive blow. The vast power of time lost its vessel and began to bleed away. Axis was not satisfied. Xantia's power activated. Devour Saturn's power. An invisible vortex swallowed the dissipating time divine power toward Axis. Though it was only an incarnation's residue, its essence was profound and immediately advanced Axis's comprehension of time's rules. Seizing the super god's power made Axis even stronger. All of this, the arrival, the battle, the killing of Koga, the annihilation of Saturn's incarnation, and the devouring had occurred within a handful of breaths. The battlefield fell into stunned silence, but then an unexpected change. "Now, time theft, give me your power." Kairos, hidden in the shadows and monitored by the Emperor, seized the moment Axis was absorbing power and slightly relaxed. He activated the ability he had been waiting for. Instead of attacking Axis, Kairos transformed into an invisible stream of time and rushed toward Pallas, who stood dazed in the center of the field, her control broken by Saturn's incarnation's death. He aimed to seize Pallas's body or whatever remnants of Saturn's connection might remain as a new vessel. He could not match Axis, so he switched targets. This recently revived goddess had been restored by supergod power. Remnants might still be within her. "I've been expecting you, Kairos." The Emperor's voice cut across the void. He opened his eyes. His cosmos, hot and sacred as a golden star, erupted into a magnificent psionic matrix of countless golden geometric runes that instantly enveloped Kairos' time stream. Axis had told the Emperor to watch Kairos. The Emperor was not about to disappoint. His power, order, sanctity, reason, and absolute hope for humanity was precisely the bane of Kairos' chaotic time flow. "What? You actually..." Kairos' soul was violently stripped from the time stream. He shouted in shock and rage. He had not expected the Emperor's restraint. Your time ends here. You are no longer useful. Axis's cold voice cut him off. He had finished absorbing, his gaze fixed on Kairos, confined by the Emperor. No, Axis, my ally. Listen, we can control time together. We can, Kairos pleaded. Axis would not listen. To one who only thought of betrayal, only total destruction was fitting. With a finger imbued with God-slaying power pointed from afar, Kairos' soul and his time were erased, gone without a trace. The god of time fell. Axis descended, his eyes sweeping the ravaged field, terrified saints and Palasites, awestruck subordinates. Saturn's incarnation dead, Kairos dead, God-slaying power in his hand, the affair was decided. Gale, Hyperion, Thanatos, Hypnos, assemble the army, Axis ordered. Yes, Lord Axis, the four responded. He did not linger. Axis had to leave before the supergod's true body could manifest. He had achieved a great coup. After digesting these powers, he would step into the multiversal level. He cast a last glance at Saori, Seiya, and the others. He no longer planned to seize more god-slaying power. He had already forced one Koga to die and obtained the power he needed. With that done, he opened a massive passage to other universes. On the far side, the familiar aura of the Warhammer universe faintly shimmered. Axis, with Athena and his subordinates, stepped through. They left survivors behind, faces of a devastated world that had lost its god-slaying power and whose supergod incarnation was temporarily dormant. What their future held was another story. Axis returned, carrying the immense gains of devouring an absolute god's power, a supergod incarnation, and a god of time. His strength rose to an unimaginable realm. Simple ranks no longer measured his divine body. Using Xantia's devouring ability and the absolute god's authority to create universes, he set a grand plan in motion. From the Warhammer universe, he drew matter and energy, and beyond the warp, he did more. He opened one new, perfectly regulated singular universe after another in the void. Each universe was like a star dotted across the emptiness, separate yet linked, forming an immense multiversal system. Axis' divine throne sat at the center of this nascent multiverse. His will became the multiverse's supreme law. The Emperor, Athena, Kasha, Kratos, his father-in-law, his wife and son, Hyperion, Gale, and the other powerful beings who followed him received corresponding divine positions and territories in that growing multiverse, becoming ruling deities over their domains. Axis became the creator multiverse god, transcending everything. And the humans of the main Warhammer universe, under the Emperor's and Axis' secret protection, continued their path. Only now they stood behind a true creator god who controlled a multiverse. The end of the book. This book is finally finished. A reader was right. It probably should have ended when the Emperor became the great world king god. I wanted to try and turn it into a journeys through worlds story and keep going. In the end, I overreached.